Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? Welcome to another edition, a special edition of Sloppy Spoilers. I'm your host, DT2 Comics Chat. We're going to be talking about probably the most pivotal, maybe even seminal event of the year so far. We're going to be talking about Justice League, the Snyder Cut. And we've got a lot to say, so let me go ahead on and bring my co-hosts in. We're going to say welcome to David Nemesis Howard. What's up, Dave?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Glad to be here. Man, this is going to be a barn burner of an episode. I apologize for the glasses. My eyes are acting up today, so I'm looking cool. But yeah, really looking forward to this. And you can find me at Nemesis FC2 on Twitter. And you look down below, you'll see all of our Twitter handles there.
That's right. Welcome to Steve Shadewing Sellers. What's up, Steve?
I'm doing pretty well. Glad to be here. I'm wearing all black in honor of the Snyder Cut because we can't have any color whatsoever in anything having to do with Zack Snyder. But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to this. We have a lot that we're going to probably really love to get into, so I can't wait.
Cool. And welcome to Jeff, Dr. Fate Bracey. What's up, Bracey?
Hello out there in TV land, or the closest equivalent since TV is virtually dead anyway. Forgive the eye patch. I can't stand to look at Nemesis with sunglasses on, so I can only see him half as well as I want to right now. And by the way, this is why he keeps calling me Dr. Fate. It's because of the color scheme of my own OC creation, Mr. Happy.
And your avatar has Dr. Fate in it with the smiley face.
It's Mr. Happy, man. It's not Dr. Fate. I get
Your
this
avatar has Dr. Fate in it. Pull up your avatar. You see what I'm talking about. Anyway, so glad that the gang's all here, and we're going to dive into this, I won't say incredible movie, I'll say incredible experience because of everything that comes along with it, everything that came around it. Now that I've had a chance to watch it for myself, and we'll get into this when we do first impressions, but my opinions have become even more extreme. I'll explain that in a minute. So we're going to kick it off by talking about general first impressions, and then we're going to get into some specifics. I'll start with mine, then I'll throw it out to the panel. My impression of the movie is, again, whatever it is I felt, it got magnified and pushed even wider. So I did not hate this movie near about like I thought I was. I thought I was just going to despise it, and I ended up not feeling that way at all. But I hate even more everything that came along with it, and the motivation and the reason it exists. And it's kind of the same thing that DC tends to do. They tend to create a world, and it sinks or swims, and then they drop it, and then they reboot. They do the same thing in the comics. And after watching this movie was definitely kind of the opening salvo for a whole bunch of things to come, and Snyder has talked about that. And so it's just really another one of those things where it gives you a lot of geek thrills, and it's also very, very frustrating because a whole lot of this stuff that you liked, you're never going to see it again like this. Okay? So like I said, my opinions are even more extreme. We're going to get into details like the cinematography, the CGI, the different arcs for the characters, all that different kind of stuff. But everything I felt has been 10x now. Because now I'm like, why would you go to all this trouble for a world you're going to drop? They did so many geek things in this movie till if you have a comics background at all, you would, because it was awesome to see. And then you're like, but that's the last time you're going to see it. Now, What was the point of that? But anyway, so I'm going to throw it out to my co-host. We're going to talk about general first impressions, and we're going to start doing some deep dives. Start with Nemesis. What were your general first impressions of this film, this 4-hour marathon film?
Well, right off the bat, I'll say I agree with you completely that everything that surrounded this movie bugged me and made my overall impression of the film go down because of it. You know, it was like I had Zack Snyder's Justice League fatigue 2 years ago, you know, and now I've got Restore the Snyderverse starting up, you know, which is a whole other thing. And I'm just like, I don't want to hear it anymore. It's like, it's just too much. I also agree with you. It's like, you're seeing this stuff, and I saw some stuff that's like, you know what, I'd like to see it, but I just don't feel like dealing with all of this anymore. You know, and that's the biggest thing is like, it really is from the cold open there, the good, the bad, and the Snyder. There was some really good stuff. There was some stuff that I was like, oh, you know, and then there was all that stuff that's Zack Snyder, you know, and you know, we'll get into that. You know, there are definitely some things where I just think that Zack Snyder is his own worst enemy sometimes on some of the stuff in the movie. But to his credit, there's a lot of stuff that was really good. There's stuff that I actually enjoyed. The final third of the movie, you know, I'll just end on this. I think the final third of the movie, minus the nightmare scene, but that whole action sequence was some of the best stuff I've seen in a comic book movie ever, let alone a DC movie. You know, I think heads and shoulders, it stands alone as some of the best action sequences in DC movie, period.
I agree completely. I had the same thought. We're going to come back to that because it's very significant. What has happened now, and anybody listening to us or watching this, you already know this, unless you're new to the internet or new to superhero movies at all. What has happened now is social media has created a second culture around content. Before social media, we had to get together in conventions. So we would see our geeky friends, you know, once a year, 2 or 3 times a year, depending on the circuit that you went to. And then if you're a content creator, you sell your books, your movies or whatever, and you kind of are surrounded. I'm in Chicago, so we had C2E2 and Wizard World, and I went faithfully every year. That's what life was like before social media. When social media hit, what has happened now is there's a whole bubble that's hype. So now you have the content and the hype, and you can't really separate the two unless you get off the grid. And so now that's a part of the discussion. That's what we're talking about. Go ahead, Bracey. Initial impressions.
I'm kind of surprised. I actually like this film a lot. I know, it was like shocker, right? And maybe it's because I don't know how I would have felt if I hadn't seen the theatrical release first. But this is kind of the movie I wish I got to see in the theater. It definitely healed a lot of ills of this movie for me, and I don't blame Joss Whedon at all for that. I think he was doing what the studio asked him to do. So I put none of that on Joss Whedon. But given everything that had gone previously, the film for me worked a lot better because it was a direct lineage from what Snyder had started, and it wasn't Whedon trying to make it into the MCU at the behest of the producers.
Right.
So for me, like, and I like the fact I'm a fan of a long form movie anyway. I'll regularly watch films that are 3.5 hours long. I understand other people don't have the endurance for that sort of thing, but I also appreciate the fact, and you can only do this sort of thing in a movie that's this dense and this long, but that you really got to get character arcs for all these characters. Like the Flash didn't really get much love in the original cut. And wow, I see why Ray Fisher was so pissed off because, man, he got excised from the previous film. So I'm glad it exists. I understand what you mean about, like, you know, DC is going to leave this alone. And Zack Snyder's little epilogue was kind of like a big, like, hey, I dare you not to let me do this kind of thing. It's very intentional, that. But I'm glad it exists. I'm glad I actually got to see it.
Ditto. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, as far as this, I think that Snyder came in with the lowest expectations possible for me because I did not like Man of Steel. I did not like Batman versus Superman. And on top of that, I agree with what Jeff is saying as far as the expectations. And I don't think it was Whedon's fault either. I think it was just, the studio handed it to him. And of course, he was going to do a hack job because what could anybody have done with this? It was a mess. So, so he went in with really low expectations, but this movie benefited from those expectations massively because it was a lot better than I thought it would be. Now, that said, I will say that the first 90 minutes was really hard to get through for various reasons. I thought the music was overdone. There's too much melodrama. It was too many slow-mos. It was just kind of hard to sit through. But there is a really good movie in the middle 2 hours, I feel. And I think that's what makes it kind of worth coming back to. That's where the meat of the story is. That is where everything felt more like the actual Justice League and not like, Snyder Man, as I like to call his Superman. None of that kind of stuff. There's none of the excess and the self-indulgence as much in the middle. The self-indulgence is in the first 90 minutes and it's in the epilogue. But if you can sit through like the middle 2 hours, you got a great movie in between that. So yeah, it is the good, the bad, and the Snyder. Absolutely, it is because you have the good stuff, you have the bad stuff, and then you have Snyder's ridiculous overwrought stuff. This did not need to be a 2 hour movie, not at all.
My personal opinion is that it would have been better to go with the original idea of splitting this up into 4 1-hour segments.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if we had gotten the content that way, everything about that experience is better. Because I agree with Steve. I fell asleep a couple of times in that first 90 minutes. And if it had got broken up and we had allowed each part to come to a conclusion or a peak, and then that was the end of that reel as he divided up the sections, and then we go to the next hour, that would have been a little bit easier to digest than all of this at once, even though it had some really good things to it. So I want to, because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but because we must acknowledge it, we're going to start kind of at the end and start with the hype bubble before we get into the actual film itself. Now, for those of you that don't know, Zack Snyder, and when I say reportedly and supposedly, I am not trying to say I doubt the story. What I'm saying is that you never know what's going on behind the scenes. You know the cover story, you know what they say. So what we were told as an audience is that due to the unfortunate suicide of his daughter Autumn, to which he dedicated the film, he was, because I've seen people go through this. I've actually worked with people that have lost a child in the middle of a project. Sometimes they try to power through because they say, if I just stay home, I'll just keep grieving and keep thinking about it. But most people, because grief comes in waves, you can't control it. You have to experience it. And so he tried to finish, he and his wife, and they just couldn't. Who could possibly blame them for that? Who could possibly, I don't even understand people that would wish someone ill for losing a child. This is a film. He's a man, he's a person, we're people. This is content, this is a project. This is his family and his life. So that happened on the first go round, and that's one of the reasons that we were told he dropped out or he got let go or whatever, and Whedon got brought in. What has happened since then is, and Steve alluded to it, we've experienced what we now call the cult of Snyder. The cult of Snyder is now a very, very real thing. So with this film, we've had to deal with a man that's had a very, very just heartbreaking personal tragedy, along with the normal passion of fans, along with people that have elevated him to maybe God status and saying that you can't criticize his work or how dare you talk about him after what he's been through. Those are all separate issues, which is why I said social media has blurred the line. A personal tragedy in your life that you need to step away and deal with is just that. Content that you create for public consumption is just that. People that support your work are just that. But now we got to deal with all that. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts about that, about the cult of Snyder, about dealing with personal loss in the middle of work, and about dealing with people who worship you and try to tear apart anybody that, that kind of thing. So let's deal with that hype bubble, because we've all had to go through that on social media. And to a person, to a man, that's what makes us tired when we think about this. not the Justice League, not the film, but what we're going to have to deal with when we talk about it. So let me hear your thoughts about that. Start with Steve.
Yeah, I will say from the first off, I don't hate Zack Snyder. I do like a number of his films. I really like Watchmen, for example, and 300. I liked both of those movies. And I like what's in the middle of this movie. So I do not say this from a place of hate at all. I say this more, and I also will say not every Snyder supporter is a cultist. To me, to reach the level of cultism, you have to reach the point where no criticism is acceptable. You can't, criticize any of his movies, even if they genuinely have problems with them. You can't make jokes about them, without getting called out by somebody on social media, or just acting as though everything he does is a perfect masterpiece and he can never do anything wrong. Like my favorite director is Alfred Hitchcock, and he's made movies I haven't liked. So
Right.
every director makes bad movies and makes mistakes. So when we talk about the cult of Snyder, we're not talking about any of that. But there is a group of people when it comes to Snyder where you just cannot have any dissent whatsoever from the cult of personality that Snyder represents, and it is tiresome. It has been tiresome for years. I think Nemesis alluded to it earlier when he said, "I've been tired of this for years." This is why. We are tired of the drama. We are tired of the constant attacks. We're tired of the bullying. We are tired of the constant hashtag campaigns. Okay, yeah, we got the movie we wanted. Now let's restore the Snyderverse. We're tired of it. Okay, and this is kind of, and this whole thing is a albatross on this movie, unfortunately, and that's unfortunate. You cannot talk about this movie without talking about the cult of personality and all this sorts of things. With respect to what Snyder went through and all that, absolutely, him stepping away made total sense. Obviously nobody's going to be thinking straight in that position, and nobody's going to make their best art in that position. So yeah, I absolutely no problem. I will say that the movie that we would have gotten 3 years ago is probably not the movie we saw. There probably would have been different decisions that he would have made in 2017. But we saw what, to a certain extent what it was, with what he would have done now. Now, though, I think also I really get the sense that Snyder has been trolling us a little bit, especially with the epilogue and especially with stuff like, the Luthor Deathstroke stuff. He definitely seems to be playing everything for what it's worth, and in a way, even, I don't know to what extent he's doing this consciously, but he's definitely, giving red meat to the trolls with some of the decisions that he's made and some of the things that he said. So, yeah, it's unfortunate because I think the movie should be taken for what it is, love it or hate it or whatever you might think about it. But unfortunately, because of Snyder's personality, because of the people that follow him, to the extent that they do, this movie is never going to be seen as its own thing. The drama behind it will always hold a shadow over it, and that's unfortunate.
That's right. Albatross was the perfect word. You moved into cult territory when the leadership can't be questioned, and when you can have no reasonable discourse. Those are marks of cult type thinking. Go ahead, Nemesis.
Yeah, it's I have been through a real journey with this whole thing as well. When his daughter died and he stepped away, I completely understood. It made perfect sense to me. I supported him, and to be honest with you, I don't know anybody in my life that didn't support that. That followed this, and I would have real, I'm not going to say issues, but I'd be wondering why someone would not support that, because it makes perfect sense to me. And then when I first heard about Zack Snyder's Justice League and the possibility of it, I was all for it. I was like, you know what? If this happens, if the man gets to do his vision, hey, cool for Warner Brothers. That would be such an amazing thing, an amazing gesture, and I'd love to see it. And I was all for it. And then the hashtag campaign started, and the toxicity started, and it was just, and the more it happened, the more it was like, I just didn't want to hear about it. And the really sad part, and I'm going to freely admit this, is that I'm a big fan of Zack Snyder's. I love 300. I love Watchmen. That's, I watch that movie a lot. I really do. And I watch the director's cut of it a lot. And unlike some of you guys, it's like I'll even watch Man of Steel and BVS every now and then. They have problems, they're flawed, but I can, check them out. But all of this toxicity around all of this Snyder Cut stuff has really kind of soured my the way I look at Zack Snyder. Rightly or wrongly, I've got to be honest. It's like I look at him, and so now there's always this little thing in the back of my mind because he started doing this stuff where he's giving out, stuff on social media and everything. And I was like, oh man, you're just feeding them, like Steve was saying. Mm-hmm. And then in my review for Comic Crusaders of Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I'll say I gave a 4 out of 5 for the movie, which is a good rating. It's a very solid rating, above average. But I said that I thought the epilogue was absolutely intentional from just Zack Snyder after seeing everything else. Absolutely. I thought that he did it. Yeah, I thought he did it intentionally with the idea of starting a new campaign to restore the Snyderverse, because why else would you do that? And so, if he didn't do it, then I don't think he's aware of what's going on, but I think the man is smart enough. And then I've seen the interviews he's done and the promos he's done since then. And like Steve says, I think it's feeding the trolls, and it's all starting up again. And now, The Rock has come out and said that he doesn't want to do more Black Adam stuff unless the Snyderverse is there, and he wants to be, go against, So I'm like, it's going to happen. This is what they said. The person at WB, the head honcho, came out and said, she said, "There's no way we're doing this." Well, they said the same thing about Zack Snyder's Justice League at the beginning. And it's like, it's just going to ramp up. And I'm already tired of Restore the Snyderverse. It's been, 2 weeks? So, So, yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Now, that word toxicity is used a lot nowadays. Toxicity comes from toxins, which are poisons. So one of the things that has poisoned fandom is the ability to no longer dissent or give and receive criticism and still remain friendly. We can disagree without becoming disagreeable. I had somebody say to me on Twitter one time, blah, blah, blah is perfect, and you're crazy if you think otherwise. Blah, I ain't talking to you. Because no one takes away my right to like or dislike what I like and to say so. And I give everybody that follows me that same right. Say what you want to say. We're going to be respectful. But when it gets to the point where thinking about it makes you tired, when it gets to the point where, every statement is an argument, I might as well just get a match because I'm about to flame on, about to flame my timeline on because I've got an opinion, that kind of thing. Go ahead, Bracey.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a part of me, like I said earlier, that it really appreciates that this happened, much in the same way that Joss Whedon got Serenity made after Firefly was canceled far too soon. So, like I said, I am very glad that this film exists. I don't get into the cult of personality stuff too much. I'm very frugal with my use of social media. I like it as a tool. I like it as a way of communicating, but I don't spend hours upon hours a day on there. And even in my marginal use, I still see this level of, to use everybody else's term, toxicity. And I remember, for instance, when Brie Larson was going through her thing with Captain Marvel, and she said some stuff that I personally consider kind of dumb when you're supposed to be out promoting a movie, and it started dividing the fandom. And it was no longer, like you mentioned, there was no discussion. You couldn't discuss, I think they're overhyping the character. I think they're doing things with it. It's like, if you don't think Captain Marvel is the end-all, be-all, you're just garbage. And it's like, wow, where did all this come from? It didn't used to be like that. And amongst us, and a lot of us on the Comic Crusaders actually have widely differing opinions on many things, but we never get heated about it. We can actually have honest-to-God geek discussions without it going to anybody's head. And it baffles me that, it's like this on the internet, on Twitter. I remember in the early days, back before we had things like this, we used to have forums were the big deal. And the flame wars. I didn't think that sort of thing would become like a global phenomenon on a platform like Twitter, but here we are.
Right.
Well,
So yeah, there's definitely there's definitely people out there who think Zack Snyder can do no wrong. And look, I'm a fan of the guy. I've even got one in my DVD collection that you didn't mention, Nemesis. I've got Sucker Punch in there. One of his weaker entries as far as like a story and all, like, but it's admittedly cool, Yeah. Yeah, so like we should be able to come together and discuss these things. There shouldn't be all this cult of personality. The end of Justice League was very intentional. There is no way that wasn't a big like middle finger to like Warner and AT&T. Like, I dare you to cancel this. I'm going to put all the asses on my side. I'm bringing it back home.
Yep.
And but for me, I'm happy with what we got. If we never got the Snyderverse or the Snyder cut, I've been like, well, Justice League was a thing. We got it. I'm glad we did get it. If we get the Snyderverse, I'll be curious to see what's going on. I'll go check out the films. If we don't, I'm fine with where we're at as well.
That was probably the main thing that changed for me after watching the end of the movie, because the end of the movie should be called, instead of epilogue, it should be called Can of Worms. Like, can of worms. I was like, holy cow. So we'll get there in a minute. Now, Jeff, you reminded me one point I did want to make before we get into other details, and that is that this type of thing is not unprecedented in geek world. That is why we have Star Trek. If you know anything about the history of Star Trek was canceled on TV, and the fan swelling and it blowing up in syndication and people starting conventions around it, and the devotion of Trekkies or Trekkers or whatever is what brought us all just about everything we have now, starting with the Next Generation, the extended universe novels, definitely the series films. They had the animated cartoon. I mean,
even the original series got a third season because of a fan write-in to the studios.
One point I would add on that, though, is that with that and with Firefly that led to Serenity, most of it was positive. It was people writing saying, we love this, we want more, we'll support it and everything.
Yes.
Versus you look at what's going on with sort of Snyderverse right now, and a movie that was just released in the US today, Kong versus Godzilla versus Kong.
Yes.
That movie is getting review bombed by people. It has nothing to do with this at all, except it's from Warner Brothers, and they're trying to kill that movie because they want their Snyderverse. I was like, that's not cool. That's just not cool.
Right. A couple more things before we leave this topic. What was really funny to me, I've heard since I've been on Twitter that this came on Twitter from Tumblr. So once they shut down certain parts of Tumblr, or the Tumblr crowd came up. I don't know how that true that is, because I never figured out Tumblr. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do remember this. Clear Fan Division came with Twilight. Think back, and you will remember that.
Never watched Twilight, so
Twilight.
We're not missing much.
I'm talking about commercial.
Team Edward or Team Jacob?
That's right, Bracey. That's it exactly. There was a commercial where they had a bunch of girls in front of a museum or store or something, and they had shovels. And one was saying Team Edwards, I'm saying Team Jacob, and they started attacking each other. And I sat back and I looked at that and I said, that was actually a condonement of violence. I guess they thought it was funny or whatever, but that's when that type of aggressive, you have to be on my team thing began to be normalized. And I said to myself, if that stays in YA, young adult, and romance, okay, because those aren't really my genres. I like, but if that gets into sci-fi, fantasy, and comic books, and that's kind of what's happened, is all that type of I'm team this, I'm team that has gotten in, and two more things that happen: national politics and identity politics. So now we have content that's either made to be reflective of political candidates that you do or don't like. And now we have the whole thing that comes along with the demographics of the characters, and the content creators are more important than the story. So we have that whole movement now to where if you have African-American characters, they can't be played, even voice acting. Now they're saying you have to be voice acted by African-Americans. And when you get into the LGBTQ community, they had to hire someone that was of that community to play Batwoman, because Batwoman in the comics is an open lesbian. Ruby Rose, I believe, is bisexual, so she got some pushback for that, because that kind of thing. And so now all that's a part of the mix. Now all that's a part of the conversation instead of can we just enjoy the movie? So when you hear us talking about toxicity and when you hear us talking about fatigue, that's what we're talking about. Not the content, not the Justice League. We're talking about all that because we got to deal with all that now. And anytime we tweet, we have to deal with that. And instead of just saying, this is what I did like, this is what I didn't like, and nobody's coming at you with a shovel. But anyway, okay, so.
And just one quick thing on that. I just have to laugh because I think back to old movies and I'm like, Rock Hudson was as gay as the day is long, and he chased Doris Day all over the movie screen for years.
Right.
Both movies. So
he was America's man's man for a long time.
Yep.
That's right. And truth be told, there are a lot of people that still don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
Who's hooking up with who? I'm trying to watch my superheroes. I don't care who's doing what behind. I don't care.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. So.
Right. So now let's get into some film specifics. There is so much to cover here, so we're just going to do it in sections. The first thing I want to talk about is individual character arcs. I know there's a lot to say, but I'll try to be brief, and you guys try to be brief because we could do the whole pod just on that. We'll look at individual character arcs. I'll start with my favorite character, which is Batman. All this, what I'm about to say, is going to be controversial, so just get ready. I have never liked.
Are you listening?
I have never liked Ben Affleck as Batman, and I still don't. I'm objective enough to know that he's been the best live screen Batman we've had in terms of book-to-screen translation and in terms of action. Because I'm objective. I understand the difference between it's bad and it's good, and I don't like it. Okay? And that warehouse scene, I watched that over and over and over again. The only thing I've seen on that level is fan films, because that is Batman. And also just the look. But see, what comic fans don't know is that is the Dark Knight Returns Batman. That's the beginning of that character. That's Batman in the 50s that's coming to the end of his career, that's getting tired. And I never did understand why they cast that Batman to start the Justice League. I still don't get that. You know what I mean? But that's who Ben Affleck's Batman is. And the reason I didn't really I love the way he moves and the way he looks. But his characterization in this film, he's not scary. He's tired. And if you think about it, so many of the one-liners come from him. At the very end, it's talking about a table with 6 chairs, and one woman says, room for more. God help us. He's cracking jokes on him. I'm like, never once does he turn and say, because I'm Batman. Okay? He's tired. He's getting ready to retire. He's going to be Dark Knight Returns Batman, where pain that's 3 days old is crawling across my back. This used to be easier. I kick the dust from my joints and climb. Okay? Frank Miller. Okay? Diana, to me, is pretty much unchanged. She's pretty much Diana. The issue with Diana is once they made Wonder Woman 84, they showed us that she can fly.
Yeah.
So this movie takes place way after 1984. So there's so many times in this movie where is she doing super leaps, because they all fall into frame the same way. They do the Iron Man arrival, boom, like that. They all do that. But when she's reaching for her sword, if you can fly, then, Flash doesn't have to tip it to you. So that was a little bit. And then also, one thing about Wonder Woman is her powers are story dependent. They are plot flexible, because Wonder Woman is faster than a speeding bullet. That's what the opening sequence taught us. But during many of the fight sequences, all of a sudden, she's not that fast. So that's a long-running comics thing. Who's the fastest? Flash? Okay. So Cyborg got the biggest glow up. And I agree with, I think it was Nemesis who said?
Jeff
who said, I can see why Ray Fisher would have an issue, because they basically reduced his story to maybe a 10th.
Yeah.
Because now if you know anything about the comics, that's Victor Stone. That's the dynamic. That's his dad. His arc. He's the Ben Grimm of DC. He had an accent. He became something that was not quite human, very bitter for a long time. Then had to grow into it, then had to accept, well, this is who I am now. And you see that at the end of the movie, him making that statement. And so it was a real arc. That's Cyborg, and if you know Cyborg from the Teen Titans cartoons, that one is just goofy and funny. But this one was much more comics accurate. So he got the biggest glow up. I can see why Ray Fisher would be upset if he does all that acting, telling all that story. And we got none of that in the theatrical release, just like, so there's that. Flash, I don't like nothing about Ezra Miller's Flash. He's not Barry Allen. I don't like the way he talks. He's like ballet Flash. He's, no. So the only thing I like about ballet Ezra Miller Flash is the lighting effects. That's cool. But everything else ain't. Lois Lane seemed like she got a glow down, but I love Amy Adams. But Amy Adams is Lana. She ain't Lois. That's another conversation. Steppenwolf got a huge glow up. He, however, is not a more dimensional villain. He's a better version of the villain that we saw. His motivations and his operations, all that are pretty much the same, but he looks so much better. And adding Darkseid changes the game. You cannot have Darkseid in anything where he doesn't take center stage. It does not happen. He's the boss character of DC villains, period, bar none. And so that changed the whole dynamic of the movie when we see Darkseid. And then we got a glimpse of Granny. I couldn't believe it. And then and then Apocalypse. That changes. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. And if you weren't a comics fan, you couldn't enjoy it on that level, but you could at least see the motivation a lot better. And then, of course, sloppy spoilers, we have to add in, Aquaman, before I get to the spoiler. Aquaman was really kind of unchanged. Going back to what we were talking about before, with the hype, we have Amber Heard as Mira. Now, we can't look at her the same anymore. Mira is a character. Mira comes from the comics. And people that love Aquaman love Mira. They go together. They're like Reed and Sue, Peter and MJ. But all this stuff with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, now that that's in the mix, can't look at her as the character the same. Just can't, just being honest. And then with Martian Manhunter, spoiler, that was a work of art. That was exquisite. That was the genre you want to see. That was how you introduce him. That's how you make him look. That was his personality. That was him being among humanity. If you know anything about John, you understand that he knows how people are going to react to him, because that green form is not his actual form. That's his humanoid form. So John's always trying to blend in literally, because he knows how people are going to react to him, because he's not Superman. Superman's an alien that looks like an American, looks like a Caucasian guy from Kansas. That's not John. So for John to finally come forward and reveal himself and say, you know what? It's time I get involved. That's Martian Manhunter. That was just, And finally with Superman, if they get rid of Cavill, I will never understand why, because not only does Cavill keep proving on screen that he's our new Man of Steel, the heir apparent to Reeves' crown, but off screen, he gets fans, he's respectful, he's fun, he's funny, because he gets the Superman mantle. We have some actors that have played Superman that end up making so many comments it sours you to them, because they don't get, once you play Superman, man, people are going to see you that way. So if you don't like that, don't play Superman. Cavill gets it. So as far as I'm concerned, he already had my vote, but he got my big old checkmark vote. Checkmark for DC after watching this. So, so a bit of a mixed bag, and we'll get into the ending, more specific stuff there, because Jared Leto Joker shows up, or who should have been the Crow, but we'll get to that later. But but just in terms of individual arcs, like I said, Cyborg glow up, Superman glow up, Steppenwolf glow up, Mira, Amber stuff, Aquaman about the same. I do not like this characterization of Aquaman. I said recently Momoa should have been Lobo. He thought so. But also, the character he played was Poseidon, not Arthur. And so when you look at it that way, the character makes more sense. That's the Greek god Poseidon. That's what he played. Drinking whiskey, hanging out at the bar, hanging out with Earth women, making hybrid babies. That's Poseidon. That's not Arthur. In the slightest, is not Arthur. And if you know anything about the comics, you know that Atlanteans are blue skinned. The fact that Arthur is Caucasian with blonde hair and blue eyes, and he's a hybrid and a mutant, is why they don't trust him as their king. So to take away that part of his physicality is ridiculous. It means you don't understand Aquaman at all. And so anyway, so, like I said, so I'm going to throw that out to you guys, and we're going to talk about it more. But just in terms of those arcs, those are kind of my thoughts. And like I said, Batman is such a mixed bag because it's a very particular Batman. It's not, I'm 30 Batman. It's I'm 52, 53. I'm feeling like a football player. All the years of that pain is on me. I'm moving a little bit slower. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this. He's that Batman. Okay. And then there's a little hint of Wonder Bat, maybe, but I'll talk about that later. Okay. Let me throw it out to you guys. Start with Nemesis. Character arcs.
Yeah. Let me see how it goes here. Batman. How's the best way to explain it? I think the actual Batman on the screen was just fine. When he's in the suit,
yes,
I don't have a problem with it. In fact, a lot of people are saying Batman was hardly in this film or didn't do anything because it's a Justice League film. I was like, that's completely unfair. That final third of the movie, that fight scene, Batman had some amazing sequences there. In fact, there was one where he lands, dodges a parademon blast, zooms in on him, throws an explosive to get the parademon, and then takes out another guy. I was like, that's Batman. That is Batman right there.
And the problem, don't forget the color.
Yeah. The problem is when he has to play Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, and I'm exactly with you, DT. I'm like, I've never understood why they decided to start with Batman 20 plus years into his career, and then Superman starting off. If anything, Superman and Batman need to start their careers at the same time because that's roughly the way it's been in the modern comics anyway. It's like they have this parallel track going on. And it's something that has become almost canon. I don't want to say it's canon because I don't want to speak for anybody else, but to me, that's how I look at the characters, and so it's a very strange choice. I'm going to say Flash for last. Aquaman, I don't have as much a problem with him as you do, but to me, the problem I do have is with Atlantis as a whole, and Aquaman is part of that. Mm-hmm. After watching what James Wan did with Aquaman and looking at how he brought those characters to life, and the one that suffered the worst for me was Vulko. He looked like he was near death in this movie, and then he looks like, an active participant in Atlantean culture in the Aquaman movie. So it's like there's this incongruency there that was really kind of hard to, you had to put the Aquaman movie aside and pretend you'd never seen it to see this.
Yes.
Cyborg, 100% agree with everything you said. I can't really add anything there. So I'm just going to say that I agree with you completely on Cyborg. Lois Lane, Amy Adams, I definitely see what you're saying, that she's more Lana. I could buy her as Lois, but I've got some things that I want to say about Lois when we talk about cinematography and everything that would go more into her character.
Okay.
Diana. I created that little video at the beginning, The Good, the Bad, and the Snyder, and Steve and I were talking Shade Wing, and we put Diana in there. And I really enjoyed Diana for 99% of this movie. I like the warrior princess Diana. I love that Diana. And so that's why seeing Wonder Woman 84 Diana was so grating for me, because I'm like, my Diana kicks ass and takes names, My Diana is an Amazon. But at the same time, when my Diana is confronted with a guy, a mortal man, who she just blocked all his bullets, and the dude doesn't have rounds in his machine gun, and then she just blasts him through a wall and kills him, instead of like taking the gun out of his hand and going, bitch, please, you're arrested now, then I got a problem, because she straight up murdered that dude,
Mm-hmm.
And you can even see it in the cop's face afterwards. The shot where the hat slowly fades down and the cop is sitting there looking up like, did she just straight up murder that dude? It's like, yes, she did, So I was like, that's not good. That's not Diana, So then who am I missing? I'm only missing Flash, right? So let's circle around to Flash. But let me get to a few minor characters real quick. Commissioner Gordon, J.K. Simmons, I thought was really good as Commissioner Gordon. I watched those little bits that we got, extended scenes. I was like, I want this movie. I want to see GCPD and Bats with Commissioner Gordon earlier in the career. I want to see that, and I liked all that. Martian Manhunter, I understood it. Once I got some more background information, though, I was a little disappointed that originally that Martian Manhunter scene was supposed to be Jon Stewart, and the WB execs made him cut it out. That really irks me. But I understood it. I still have a little bit of a problem. I don't think Martian Manhunter would have sat back during the whole fight with Steppenwolf. I think he would have gotten involved. But that's me quibbling. That is an honest to goodness geek discussion, that we could have, back and forth. So now I'm going to get the Flash. I don't like Ezra Miller's Flash at all either. I don't like him in the role. He doesn't look like Barry Allen at all. That said, I think this version of the Flash was 1,000% better than what Joss Whedon gave us, because Joss Whedon's Flash was a coward. He was a straight up coward, and I don't know why he chose to do that, but I never saw anything heroic in the Flash that was presented in Joss Whedon's cut. Here, at least in the character itself, not the actor, but the character, I saw the makings of a hero. And I also saw, and I got to give credit to Zack Snyder for this, the beginning of Flash's fighting style in this movie. And specifically, underneath, when they were trying to rescue the people from underneath Gotham Harbor, Flash was dodging bolts and then coming in and hitting people at speed, and he's just pushing and punching at speed. But it was like, I'm seeing how Flash fights, and it's starting to happen, and then the same thing, the way that Flash thinks, at the end where he's running back time and stuff. So I was starting to see stuff from the comics that felt like the Flash. Doesn't mean I like Ezra Miller in the character at all, but as far as the stuff they were doing with the Flash, I thought it was promising. So it's like, as far as I'm concerned, for the Flash movie, it's like, tell Ezra Miller to go play somebody else. We'll give you go and look through the comics, and we'll give you some people, and we'll let you play somebody else. But please recast him, because he is just not Barry Allen.
Right.
So,
well, the theatrical cut was Peter Parker as Barry Allen, as written by Joss Whedon, and this Wonder Woman, so cool. She had the Xena Amazon music every time she did something. That Amazon music, it was like Xena kicked in. It was awesome. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think I'll just kind of start with the Trinity and kind of work my way down. Superman, I thought, was a lot better, and I will say this should have been the Superman that we saw in Man of Steel, and we didn't see him. Because what we got was the character who finally kind of gets it. We see the characters like, okay, I am Kryptonian and I'm human. I have found the point between them, and I am basically the protector of Earth. This is my purpose. This is what I know I'm going to do. And he does this. The one thing, and I thought that the scene, in the ship with the voiceovers from Kevin Costner and Russell Crowe were both good. The one thing I will say, though, is I wish that this had been the Kevin Costner from Man of Steel instead of the, let's go let kids die, that's okay, version. So, yeah, this was a step up, definitely. Batman, I don't know. I'm kind of like on Affleck. I really am. I don't have like very strong feelings about him one way or the other. When people say that Affleck is like the best Batman ever, I'm like, not really. I like him as an actor. I just didn't really I never really felt him in this role. Here he was fine. Like I didn't think that he did anything like overly off to me. He was doing what Batman does, and that's perfectly fine. Wonder Woman was the character that bothered me the most. I will say that a lot of her in the movie is not that bad. The problem is the scene that Nemesis talked about, and we've kind of gone back and forth a few times here and on other chats about it. So I'm not going to go too much into it. But for me, Diana is the character from the post-crisis era. She is the person that don't kill if you can wound. don't wound if you can subdue, that line from the Gail Simone run. I see her as an ambassador of peace first, and she would use the minimum amount of force necessary to resolve the conflict. And this is why the whole scene with the guy getting destroyed, I mean, absolutely was wrong, absolutely wrong. And I had a similar problem also with Steppenwolf and her decapitating him when he was already defeated by that point. It's like, you can kill him if there's no other way. I have no problem with that. But killing him when he was already defeated, no, that's not the Diana that I prefer. But
it's so cool though. It's all this right here.
Yeah. Just to cut in, visually great, but it's not Diana.
Just to cut in real quick, I can't believe I forgot Superman. So what Steve said about Superman is exactly how I feel. I thought that his arc was completed, and B, you guys are never going to see it, but the back and forth Steve and I have had, this discussion about it with Wonder Woman has been epic. But that's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning. Yeah. It's been an epic, good back and forth nerd discussion about the different visions we have for Wonder Woman, and it's been it's beautiful, and we're still friends. So
absolutely. Absolutely, to the end. And I will say, like, Wonder Woman is one of those characters that is admittedly not consistent even in the comics. So, you can definitely have very different takes. You can have the Nemesis viewpoint, you can have mine, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can, make whatever makes sense to you, as a fan. That's absolutely okay. So, yeah, that's the Trinity. Flash, I felt like he was better. I agree there. I thought he was a lot better than he was in Whedon for reasons that Nemesis already went into. I felt like he had a consistent arc as well, because I feel like, okay, he was doing something. He starts off in a place where he doesn't know what to do with his life, and then he kind of gets to the point at the end where, this is what I want to be. I'm going to be a police scientist, all that. I will agree, though, I am with DT largely on this. I do not like Ezra Miller's Flash. I do not like the way that he's typically presented. I don't think that this is the Barry Allen that I would normally see. I'm more of a fan of the Barry Allen, from the comics, or at least, from the pre-52 comics, where he was more the inspiration for speedsters like Wally West. And I didn't see that guy there, not even remotely. I have never seen that guy there, and I will never see that guy there, because DC keeps wanting to put this version of the Flash that is completely, owned by him wanting to save his mother all the time, and I never really liked that addition. So yeah, that character is not. I'm not really on board, but he was better. He was a lot better, and he had an actual arc and a story. Fair enough. I'm willing to go with that. Aquaman, yeah, what a mess. And plus, you get stupid scenes of the Icelandic singing, and he's throwing a bottle of beer into the water under the rocks, and I'm like, yes, because Aquaman is all about poisoning the oceans. That is totally what Aquaman is about. No nonsense.
I didn't think about that.
He was much better in the James Wan movie. I liked him a lot more there. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about the supporting characters from Aquaman while we're in there. I didn't like that Mera had her British accent when she didn't in the other movies that we've seen her in. That was noticeable, and it made it even worse with the Amber Heard situation, because I'm not hearing Mera, I am hearing Amber Heard. And so that is a bad thing. I did not like that at all. Volko, yeah, I see where he kind of didn't. It definitely looked like this was filmed later. Unfortunately, I love Willem Dafoe though, so okay, I can let that go. Cyborg, he's a character I'm not really that crazy about, but I got to give him props. It was well written. I'm completely with DT on this one, and with you, rest of you guys on this one. I thought Cyborg was way better. I thought he was generally accurate to the Wolfman versions. Yeah, so all that was fine. Steppenwolf was a lot better. Yeah, I agree. He's not a much better character, but at least we see that he's a little bit more sympathetic and he has a motivation. And bringing in Darkseid and Desaad absolutely made that work, because we now see Steppenwolf in a different light. He's a guy who's just trying to go home. Perfectly good motivation. He's not a one-note villain anymore. It's like, okay, I will do whatever I have to get back home, and I don't care who I have to kill to do it. That's interesting. Not a problem with that. Yeah, Darkseid, I wish that he had some color. It's like there's nothing wrong with him having blue. Why does he have to be dark? No reason. But I felt like the character really, really worked. Amy Adams was fine. I really love Alfred. Um, Jeremy Irons is always great as Alfred. He had some really good lines, and he had some really good moments as well. So yeah. And the only thing I'll add about Batman, which I just remembered, is Snyder has a love affair with Frank Miller, and I think that this is why we keep seeing this push of Dark Knight Returns. This is why we saw, a very DKR version of Batman and Batman versus Superman, for example. He did 300, so yeah, he has a thing with Frank Miller, and unfortunately, I don't think it really works for this version, for the DCEU version. But overall, I thought that they were all better than expected, but I still have problems with them.
Okay, go ahead, Bracey.
Ezra Miller should have played Desaad. If you think about it, that's who he should have played.
Yeah,
Now,
I said that he should have played like a live action Grant Morrison.
Yeah,
or
right.
Eisenberg. He would have been good as Desaad too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right too.
Because that was kind of interesting about Desaad. Desaad actually came across as stronger than we're used to seeing him betrayed. Definitely a lot more assertive and self-assured. And when he questioned Darkseid, like, I told you he would fail. And Darkseid turned is like, he's getting ready to zap his ass, but he didn't. I totally thought it was going to be one of those moments. He was like, would you like to return to Oblivion, Desaad? Because Darkseid for those of you who don't know, Darkseid has the ability to destroy you and then recreate you at a different time if he wants to.
The Omega Beams,
he can totally wipe you from existence and bring you back. Yeah. So it's a great bargaining chip as a leader if you're going to be a despot. Let's see. I'll go in sort of a reverse order here. Least favorite character is still Ezra Miller, but I just don't like the way he does Flash. I don't like this turning Wally West into Flash and naming him Barry Allen, which is what we get. This is a bit of the Mike Baron era Wally West. When he was a little bit more Spider-Man-y, they went with this younger guy. He was a little bit jokey. He was bearing a responsibility of carrying on the name, even though his powers had been greatly reduced after the crisis. And his fixation on Iris, all this kind of stuff. I don't like that for Barry Allen, so don't call him Barry Allen. Just make him Wally West if that's what you want to do with it, if you want to skew to the younger demographic. But I will say I do like his character arc better in this. He actually has an arc. He is far less annoying than what Whedon wrote him to be, because Whedon likes writing these kind of punchy, sarcastic, snarky characters, and this was the one that they gave him for that, so he snarked it up to the max. Probably, again, this hey, make this guy the kids can relate to or something. But he did have more, and even though this movie likely, maybe Snyder will get his way, maybe it won't, but he did set things in motion, like, I had my meeting with Iris, that kind of thing. And that sort of stuff is cool. Like, for all of us comic geeks who are in the super know, that sort of like excessive world building is cool, because we know it can lead to other things, which is also a detriment because we know it probably won't happen. So it was nice to, because he and Cyborg really got turned into almost cameo characters. They had a little bit more than cameo in the theatrical release, so it was nice to actually see them as fully fledged characters in this film. They actually got to do things. We got some backstory. We got some motivations. And speaking of which, like I mentioned before, Fisher is right on point. I'd have been upset with that too, having 90% of my material cut like that. Like, wow, because this guy has the best arc in the film. He undoubtedly has the best arc in the film. We see him starting out at his absolute worst, really angry with his dad, even though his life was saved, but then it's all tied up in the death of his mother as well. And by the end, coming to realize that he does have a life, he does have a purpose, and he is, in fact, a hero. That takes me back around to the Flash. I like the point the Nemesis made that the Whedon cut Flash was a coward, but this guy, he's sacrificing his life to help Victor. These guys are the linchpins to saving the whole world. and he's just talking to himself, monologuing as if he can speak to his dad. As characters will want to do in fiction sometimes. He's like, I just want you to know, Dad, that I was one of the good ones. I was one of the best of the best. I was one of the ones who made the difference. And like, yeah, okay, this guy has fully become a hero as well. He's not just the guy who runs around just, I'm just going to tap things into place, and nobody needs to know what's going on. He stepped up. He had his Iron Man moment where, like Steve said to Iron Man, you're not the one to make the sacrifice play. Flash makes the sacrifice play. Cyborg makes the sacrifice play. They become fully invested heroes, and I love this movie for giving them that. Wonder Woman is, for me, largely unchanged. I will say, you guys are talking about her like just murking that last dude. Dude, I didn't notice this when I watched the theatrical cut of Justice League, but as she's dealing with the last guy, I'm seeing blood spatters on walls, and then as she's walking up to the dude, the one guy has a pool of blood on her. She killed all those dudes. She Batmaned all of them. She BVS'd them all. Like, okay, this is like I'm with you guys. This is not how Wonder Woman operates. She is an Amazon. She is a warrior. She will take you out if she has to. But that's the thing. If she has to. She is far more than mortal. She could have handled all of those guys without having to kill them all. But like when you're just ragdolling dudes into marble walls, they're not getting back up. And on top of that, the thing that didn't get me, that when she blew up the guy, I wasn't as upset about her blowing up the guy because I realized she'd killed everybody else in the room. I was thinking about all the cops and all the people on the street who are watching this stuff, and all of this marble and stone shrapnel flying out all over the street. It's like you set off a big bomb, and like it's like, oh, it's a good thing everybody miraculously ducked in time. One of those incidents could have taken somebody's head clean off.
She realistically should have killed everybody in there.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous. But I guess she throws her shockwave out in a directional sort of pattern, but still. Too bad we didn't remember about all the people on the street. Okay, so it's one of those things where in movies they do rule of cool versus like thinking clearly. But I want my heroes to think about the other guy. I remember that being a big point of contention for people with Man of Steel. It was like, oh, Superman's causing all this destruction. It's like, he's been Superman for 24 hours. He doesn't know enough to get people out of the street. He's all into his head. You just threaten his mom. He's just throwing down the beat down, and then you're throwing him across the street into the Wendy's and all this kind of stuff. So I was willing to forgive that, but you made a really excellent point, Nemesis. I think this is the Superman. If Snyder had been allowed not to do BVS, he was made to do BVS. If he was allowed to do Superman 2 like he wanted to following Man of Steel, I think this is the Superman we would have gotten. This is the fully realized Superman. This is the guy who's the hero. This is the guy who realizes he is the protector. And God almighty, thank you for giving us a little something with Kevin Costner, which wasn't like, you should stay hidden and let people down, even though you're a veritable god on this planet. And, it's a weird flip that they did, that it's his mother who pushes him to do the right thing. And for some reason, his dad is afraid that his invulnerable son will be dissected. He's invulnerable, man. Get over it. I don't know. It was this movie actually didn't just fix Justice League for me. It actually fixed a lot of other things that happened in previous films.
Yes.
I still don't like the heroes just run around like killing willy-nilly. I'm okay with the parademons. It is a war scenario. This was a war film in a lot of ways, and they're fighting a war. And when you fight a war, you have to fight a war. You really have to fight a war. So I like this Superman a lot better, and I like the fact that I actually saw real Henry Cavill's lip, not fake lip.
Yes.
Lip. Nice.
Yes.
Thank
We're
you.
going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to talk about fake lip in a minute. Go ahead.
Aquaman, pretty much the same. And that's fine. That's fine. I like the character that we got in the Aquaman movie. It didn't change anything as progression, although it was really weird for them to have. Why did Amber Heard start speaking in a British accent? These are reshoots. Why we've already seen the Aquaman. You don't do an accent the whole movie. I don't even remember doing an accent in the theatrical cut, but I'd have to go back and check. So Aquaman's fine. He's the same, and thank God there was no cringy, Wonder Woman using her lasso to make him say cringy things kind of moment. Steppenwolf. I was actually very, very pleased with Steppenwolf. Not just his look and the fact that he wasn't just a big gray blob anymore. I love the fact that they gave him some really non-human proportions. The extra thumb on his hand. I like the reference to the Minotaur. With the Amazonian connection, he looks like the Minotaur.
I never caught that.
Yeah, I mean, like he's got the big horns, and he's got almost a digigrade kind of leg in the way his legs are set up, and he's all really top heavy, and he's got that squat face now. I love the redesign, and I love the fact that he actually had motivations. There's a backstory there that I want to see. That not only does he want to go home, but he wants to go home. He's being punished because there was a matter of betrayal involved, and he swung back around in Darkseid's favor. So maybe it was before Darkseid grabbed the throne, or maybe it was on the path to grabbing the throne, because we did get to see Darkseid in the past before he actually grabbed the throne. So, yeah, and it was also very, very cool, obviously, to see Darkseid, a bit of granny goodness, decide. It was like, oh, man, Kirby's Fourth World, bring it to me. But, yeah, I was really down with the characterizations. Pimping to see Martian Manhunter played like Martian Manhunter. I do agree. He's coming from a dead world. He's not going to let another world just die. He would have made an appearance at the final battle. But other than that, I liked his characterization. And once again, Zack Snyder does something very particular with Lois Lane that few movies do. He really made her a smart character in Man of Steel. There's been times in the comics when they talked about that Lois would have easily figured out how Superman is. Perry White figured it out. They're just too good being investigative reporters. And I like that about Man of Steel. And I like the fact that things that were hinted at in the theatrical thing, that it all hinges on Lois. And in some cases, it all hinged on Martha, too. We get to see that. And Zack, because this is his baby, he's the Kevin Feige of the Snyderverse, if you will. He brings that through. Everything about Lois building up to the moment when she's finally there for Superman's rebirth all makes sense, and it's all pivotal. And even Martian Manhunter going and bringing Martha back into play. All the pieces just fit together, and I really got to give Snyder a lot of credit for that.
Okay, I'm going to give you some pushback on your pushback, then you can give me some pushback on my pushback on your pushback. I agree with all that stuff with Superman. I was disappointed not to see the red and blue except in the hologram from Cyborg.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Did they explain the black costume or not? Because I might have been asleep.
Nope,
Okay.
That's just clearly an homage to the comics.
It's just a costume change.
Okay, for those of you
Snyder
that
just
don't
likes
know,
black.
when Superman was killed in the comics by Doomsday, when he came back, there were actually 4 other Supermen that came back first, and then the real one comes back. He wears that black suit with the silver shield because it helps collect the solar energy and it concentrates it, which helps him recover his powers faster, because he had to really get a full recharge because he got beat that close to death. He wasn't actually all the way dead. So it had a function in the comics. Here it seems to be more aesthetic. You also don't need a cape for that. But anyway, so I miss seeing the red and blue, but everything else about him, especially the fake CGI lip, I'm so glad that was gone. I don't understand how that made it in the first cut. How can you spend $250 million on a movie and it just right here, I can do better than that with my Photoshop. But anyway, so there's that. This Diana thing, I'm going to throw some stuff out there, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. Let me tell you what the problem is with writing Diana. The problem with writing Diana is that Diana has always been a concept and not a person. And so they keep moving her, she's an ambassador, no, she's a warrior, no, she's a feminist icon, no, she's every woman, no, she's just a tough Superman, because she's a concept. She's never really had just defining characteristics as a personality. Bruce was a person who had something happen to him. He created the Batman persona. Superman is 3 people. He's Kal-El, he's Clark, and he's Superman. Okay? But Diana has always been an idea. And Wonder Woman is an idea. That's why she's so hard to write. What do y'all think about that?
I got a good comment on that, in that I agree with you, but I think the DC, with all the stuff that I could talk about the actual comics right now that I think DC is doing badly, I think one of the things that they're doing well right now and I was against this at first. I didn't think it would work, is they introduced Diana into Justice League Dark. And I've been reading Justice League Dark, and after reading it for, I don't know, I've been reading it for about a year and a half now. I'm like, yeah, this is where she belongs, because Diana, Shazam does his stuff with magic, but Diana is a magic-based hero. She needs to fight magical creatures, mythical creatures, that type of thing. Putting her with Justice League Dark makes perfect sense, because how many epic level things can you come up with for a Diana solo comic book? It's kind of hard, especially with her whole shtick, being an Amazon and the daughter of a god, or however you want to do her backstory. But with Justice League Dark and her being the muscle in a magic-based Justice League team, it works really well. So I think that is the solution.
Oh, what do you think about that, Steve?
Yeah, I think that you're onto something, because every single version of Diana to some extent is different, and a lot of it is just different writers and editors come in and then they just decide, oh, I want to interpret this idea in a different way, and we need to do something radically different, and of course you get these weird off takes. I felt like if they had kept to the post-crisis version, you would have had something to build off of, because I feel like there was some consistency there. But then you bring in the New 52, and then Dan DiDio throws everything out. And then what you end up getting is, okay, we want her to be more of a warrior. We want her to be the daughter of Zeus. We want her to have, all of this more warrior aspect. And, she kills people, and, it's no big deal. She does all of this. So, you have very drastically different takes now. And it basically is, okay, do we want her to be, the warrior all the time first? Or do we want her to be the agent of peace, ambassador first? And which one you get depends on, who you want to write at the time, because there is no consistent idea of who Wonder Woman is, and there really hasn't been for most of her history. And it gets even worse when you add in all the animated versions, when you add in the DCU version, and even the different takes on her, like Snyder and Patty Jenkins don't even agree on this. Because you get Snyder, who's definitely more of the warrior aspect, and Patty Jenkins, particularly in 1984, is definitely more taking the ambassador of peace approach. So I think we're gonna constantly get schizophrenia with Wonder Woman virtually every single creative change now, because nobody wants to agree on who she is.
When you add in Donna and Cassie, because if there's anybody that doesn't need a protege, it's Diana. She's immortal. She's eternal. Where's she going? Bracey, what do you think about Diana?
Did you want to say something real quick, Nemesis?
No, I was going to say, in another pod, we actually brought that up, is that her character is not even consistent when it's supposed to be the same character in the DCEU. And depending on which movie we're watching, she's been in 4 different movies, and I would say that she's been portrayed 4 different times. Mm-hmm. And it's the same character. So
pretty much,
I can get into a little bit. I can get into that to a little bit with an immortal character. An immortal character, you can write as somebody who changes with the times, or you can write an immortal character as somebody who is consistent throughout time. That's the way I look at it. But speaking of Wonder Woman, I never agreed with Wonder Woman being in Justice League Dark until you said that. Then it made perfect sense, because it flashes me back to my favorite run of Wonder Woman, and that is George Perez's Wonder Woman after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Because Wonder Woman, I'm a much bigger Marvel guy than a DC guy, but Wonder Woman is DC's Thor. She is not only a magical being, she is a creature of mythology. And what Perez did was exactly what Simonson did with Thor. He got to those roots, and she was fighting things like Ares, God of War, Hydras, Gorgons, all the Phobos and Deimos, all these wonderful things from Greek literature and mythology. And that's where she belongs. That makes perfect sense to me, that she would be on a monster slaying team now. And at the same time, Perez was able to have her be that ambassador of peace and yet be the warrior, because, she's a monster slayer, not a mortal slayer, a monster slayer. And I think that's the way you consistently have Diana. She's making this bridge between the ancient past and the modern world of men. and then she's dealing with things that pop up, a la, things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Supernatural. Like, oh, here's something spooky's happening. I'm gonna go muscle it up. That's where she works best. I have to agree. And
And
I kind of like it here because thematically, like I said, I felt like Steppenwolf. I know he's Apocalypse and all that, but like to me, I just kept thinking like, man, he's like the Minotaur. He looks so much like the Minotaur, and I love that connection.
I think that's a great point because some of my favorite Diana stuff in recent memory has been some of the animated movies, and there was one where she had to pop into Tartarus to take. It's like that's the kind of stuff that Diana, for me, I love to see. It's like, all right, I got to put out the fires of the old world so it doesn't mess with the new world that Steve is talking about, where I'm the ambassador to. Those are really good points. Those are really, really good points.
See, like Wonder Woman, Thor are great for like popping in, like when they're on a team, they're on Justice League or they're on the Avengers. They go out and they do superhero stuff with their friends, but in their books, it's all about beating down that mythology to keep it from taking over the mortal world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, see now what we tapped into here, this is why they struggle with both Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, because they don't understand the mythology. Okay, there's a difference between, and Carl was the one who got me into this Captain Marvelology on Twitter. There's a difference between magic caused and magic based. Magic based is where you're actually affecting reality. That's Zatanna, Constantine, Dr. Fate. Magic causes where you get an endowment that allows you to do things, but you're not casting spells like Wanda Maximoff. See, Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel are magic cause. Their powers come from magic endowments, then they can do things. And the things that they do are visceral. Magic based is when you're changing reality. That's Zatanna, Dr. Fate, all different kind of stuff. And so a lot of people don't even understand what the acronym with Shazam, the difference between the Greek and the Roman names. And they don't understand what different versions of the characters, as the Greek mythology states, they can do. Because if Captain Marvel has these powers, he can do way more than you've ever seen him do, except in the original stuff, because CC Beck got it.
I wonder if Perez was thinking about that when he did his reboot after the Crisis with Wonder Woman. Because all of her powers were blessings from individual gods. Like she got her speed from Hermes. And that's very Captain Marvel in origin when you think about it.
And the funny part that you say that is that some of that has carried over. It's stayed, so you still have like the lasso of Hestia. Like she even mentions it in Justice League, but they've gotten rid of the whole reason why that means something. So they've kept the least important part, which is the name, but they aren't really giving you why it makes sense for the character at all, So.
Yeah, and I will say, like, Captain Marvel is in the same boat as Wonder Woman, maybe even worse in terms of being inconsistent because of all the writing and the idea that they don't really know who the character is. We know who he is because, we've been reading all the comics since forever, and we look at the Curse of Shazam and it's like, what the hell is this? But, and Wonder Woman is very much, I think, in a similar boat as that.
The wisdom of Athena, the boots of Hermes, and just her strength, belt of strength. She's a bondage character. So she was written by a man who was living with his wife and his girlfriend. So, and William Moulton Marston also invented the lie detector. And then in original stories, if she got tied up with her own lasso, or if she got tied up by a man, she loses all her power. And so they could never put actual Wonder Woman, because people couldn't deal with all that. And so again, that if you know anything about the comics. So Diana has always been all over the place, and then everybody has to kind of carve out, I guess, the version of her they're comfortable with, but it has not been a consistent thing, which leads me to this next thing. Now, you mentioned Jon Stewart. I'm going to throw this out. Oh, let me throw this out, then I'll throw that out. I want the dark side to be bigger. I don't know if that was anybody else, but I think I'm spoiled by the comics and the JOU stuff. But I want the dark side to be impossibly, like, no human could be that big. Just me. But I love Grain of Goodness, and they need to have Kathy Bates. And I done said that on Twitter like 20 times. So here's the thing. You mentioned Jon Stewart, and you mentioned Martian Manhunter. I understand your point about John getting involved. And if we're dealing with comic John, maybe I tend to agree.
You mean
But
John?
the reason I could accept this is because he has a lot at stake in his human identity as being part of the military. And remember, if he tips his hand to his comrades, though he can read his mind, in the movie verse, he does not know these people. He's been watching them, and remember, he had a bit of an antagonistic relationship with Superman. But this is the beginning of the Justice League. He does not know these people. So if he throws his lot in and they have a reaction when they find out this guy's part of the military, his cover might be blown. So I can buy it a little bit more, even though I agree completely. The character of Jean, as we know, would be different. He wouldn't just sit back. He would have been the one, because in the comics and the books and in the animated series, he's the one who got Justice League together. So I agree that he would have taken a more proactive role had he been character consistent from that. But I can kind of buy with this one based on the fact that he was in Man of Steel and it was a wink. And now we see, okay, he's in the military. So there's a little bit more at stake for him revealing himself, I think. Which leads me to what you said about John Stewart. Here's the thing. I'm gonna say this, throw this out, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. I've been scratching my bald head trying to figure out what y'all got against Green Lanterns. What is the problem with Green Lanterns now? I would hate to think that it's as simple as you're so hung up on the Ryan Reynolds flop that you don't want to do anything. But that is kind of the suit mentality. That's kind of all or nothing. We either have multi-billion-dollar hits or, I would hate to think it's that, because that means, have you read a Green Lantern comic? Have you know, anyway. But here's what I think the problem is with Lanterns. Superman, Flash, they do what we do at an advanced level. Their powers are visceral. So we can see Superman has enhanced vision. We can fight, Superman has enhanced strength. We can run, Superman and Flash has enhanced speed. All of that stuff is visceral, okay? You can feel that. It's just as a heightened level. There's no analog real-life component for a Green Lantern ring. There's nothing in real life that makes you force your will through an object and create a plasma sculpture. How? So I think that, maybe if you're an artist or a sculptor, you can relate. But there's no real life analog to being a lantern. They keep saying that they're space cops, but they're more like paladins and sometimes Ronins, because they're enforcing somebody else's idea of justice. And then when they don't like it, they rebel. So maybe cops, maybe not. Maybe military, maybe not. That's the closest thing to a real life analog we have to the Lantern Corps. So maybe I'm giving them too much credit, because that's my writer's hat talking. Because to write a lantern believably, you've got to connect it to something that people can relate to. That was one of the problems with the Ryan Reynolds movie, because it's goofy. Big old green fist is goofy. Big old, green machine guns is goofy. Who does railroad tracks? You over there with your target? That's goofy. Don't nobody know what that is. And so you would have to do something that people can say, okay, that's my thing. So tell me what you think about their reticence for lanterns, because we've been wanting Hal Jordan, we've been wanting John Stewart, we've been wanting Kyle. Some people want Guy Gardner, and I say he should be Bill Burr, but we've been wanting him for a while. So,
oh my Lord, Bill Burr is Kyle Rayner.
Bill Burr is
no.
Wow.
Guy, not Kyle. Guy.
Guy Gardner.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Bill Burr is Guy Gardner.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Oh, we would watch it just for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell
I
me
would love to see Batman punch him out.
that too. Holy cow! Okay, so tell me what you think the issues are with bringing the lanterns on screen. Is it money from the CGI budget? Is it fear from a Reynolds movie? Is it what I'm saying, that they don't know how to write it viscerally? Tell me what you think. Bracey, you start.
I don't have trouble identifying with Green Lantern for exactly the reason you said. You said, we all these others are analogs of things that we can do, just amplified to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. But I'm an artist. I regularly take things out of my head and I create them in a medium. And so, if you gave me a lantern ring, I would essentially be Kyle Rayner, who is also an artist. I'd be creating all kinds of fantastical stuff to fight the good fight and all that. So I can totally relate to that. I think part of the problem is because if you are not in that kind of comic book headspace, it does get goofy. They even wink at it in the Reynolds movie. We're like, man, seriously, man, you made a Hot Wheels track? I say, oh, nephew's
That was
room,
a
and
Hot Wheels track.
yeah, because he does. He makes a little Hot Wheels track, and his nephew's always playing with it. And I do believe there are ways to do it, but the problem is they went with the new 52, which was kind of that version of Hal Jordan is Maverick from Top Gun a little bit, and then they
Mhm.
throw really funny guy Ryan Reynolds in the role, and they don't take it seriously, which is unfortunate. There's ways to do comedy and sci-fi action. If you look at the original Star Wars movies, the original three films, there's very appropriate situational humor in those, very appropriate situational, funny dialogue, and even things that happen, and they all work within the context of the story or the moment that's being told. Uh, they basically kind of turned Ryan Reynolds loose to ad lib, do your own thing. You're Ryan Reynolds, you're funny, and then they probably start punching up the script with funnier things for him to do, and they had this irreverent take on Hal Jordan, which was not like the at the time 40 maybe 50 years of history that Hal already had as a very serious combat fighter pilot.
Yes.
They tried to sexy it up, making him all Top Gun, and then they didn't even put him in the real Air Force. He was just like a private contractor at the time. So just everything that made Green Lantern that had been around for decades and decades, Green Lantern was gone when they made that film. And studios continually, we've discussed this so many times, they learn the wrong things. They're like, people don't like superhero movies. Like, no, people love superhero movies. You just got to give them a good one. They don't like deconstruction. Like, yeah, we like deconstruction. That's what Watchmen's for. Man of Steel, we don't like Superman deconstructed. If you want to do that, grab Mark Waid's Irredeemable. That's a great deconstruction of a Superman. Go with that. There's all kinds of ways you can go. There's actually parts of that Green Lantern movie I like because I really like Mark Strong's portrayal of Sinestro and
Yes.
that Kilowog. The stuff in space was Green Lantern. More of that. You know what? You could have taken that movie completely off planet, and
Mhm.
it would have been a fantastic experience, I think. Because Hal Jordan
Make
is
it,
Reynolds, even because I know he's got the chops to pull it off. He could have been the whole fish out of water. He's out of his depth, learning how to be both a space cop, a space marine, and a space detective. Because somebody asked one time, like, what I would do if I was going to write something for DC. And I said, I didn't think about this till the time, but I think I would tackle Green Lantern because I would get in the having the military experience. I understand that. But then they also have to be peacekeepers and investigators. You can't just go in there, with a broadsword and fix everything. So I think I would try and approach it from the standpoint of a little bit of a noir mixed in with a military sci-fi drama. And I think that's how you approach Green Lantern. You can have your fun characters. You can, if you want it to be a little bit more lighthearted, bring in somebody like Carl Rayner. Show that he's like a manga artist, and then the goofiness is acceptable when like he's making like he's all weebooed out. And he's making a 50-foot tall waifu was attacking a monster hitting the city or something like that. That's the way you approach it, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay. All that sounds reasonable. All right. Go ahead, Steve. What do you think? What is their problem with bringing Green Lanterns into the Justice League?
I think with DC and WB, I think you're smarter than DT, honestly, because I think what they're doing is they're seeing a low risk, I'm sorry, high risk, low return thing with Green Lantern. They're seeing, okay, this movie flopped, and they're also seeing, oh, look how much money we would have to spend to make this a good movie. And they don't want to take the risk because they think it's just going to cost them money because these people don't know what they're doing. So yeah, I think you're thinking about it like a fan would, and I think that that's fine, and I encourage that. But at the same time, I don't think that that's how executives and bean counters think. And the way they think is always, how much money are we going to get out of this? And they don't think they're going to get any because they don't know the properties like fans do and like we do. So there's that angle. Can it work? Yes. practically any of the main GLs, including Simon Baz or Jessica Cruz. They're all good characters. In fact, Jessica's my favorite. Because I think what they need to get to is the core of the idea, in addition to some of the things that both of you have said. They need to get to the core idea that Green Lantern is about overcoming fear. That is the core idea. That is what everybody can relate to, because everybody's been afraid of something. Everybody's had to overcome their fear of something. That is what Green Lantern is about. For Hal Jordan, it's his fear of failure and ending up like his dad. For Jessica Cruz, it's like getting out of the house and talking to people. All of these things. For Jon Stewart, it's fear that he'll fail like he did in the planet Xanshi where people died. All of these kinds of things. These are the fears that they have to overcome because they're human beings. So, it's not necessarily about the Aladdin's lamp stuff. That's just the visual aspect of it. That's the stuff that looks cool and looks great on the screen. But the core of the story is about, are they overcoming fear of something, and how do they do this? So if you have it about that and you make it the story good and you cast it right, which they didn't with Green Lantern, Ryan Reynolds, as much as I love him, is not Hal Jordan. He could have been Kyle. He could have been somebody else. But there's no way he could have been Hal Jordan. You needed a Tom Cruise for that. And so that's one of the major reasons why that didn't work, in addition to a number of other things. But, especially when they had Mark Strong as Sinestro, who was awesome, as Jeff said. And, Kilowog was great, and, Oz and all that. As far as the Lanterns as an organization, I think we also need to remember that they come from the roots of pulp science fiction, particularly The Lensman by E. Doc Smith. And he definitely intended them to be a paladin-like organization in space. That's what they were. They were meant to be incorruptible. They were meant to be the highest that a human could possibly be. They bred for superior beings. Not only physically but morally. Spiritually. This is what they were trying to do. The alien race called the Eurasians were trying to make a superior being like that. So, and Green Lantern is based on that in the sense that, and they're not just about being overcoming fear, but about being honest. You have to be honest and fearless to be a Green Lantern. So, yeah, there's definitely is that root in terms of what being a Green Lantern is, and it follows from that. So I think you need to not only remember the core idea, but you also have to remember where the Green Lanterns come from as a concept. The idea that they are a paladin-like organization, that they do have this idea of being honest and being fearless and enforcing, the laws of the universe as bound by the Guardians, all of these kinds of things. And there are a lot of cosmic concepts and there are a lot of difficulty that you have to explain it, but a good writer can make it work. Jeff Johns made it work. And all you need is a good script, and you need somebody who can play that. And unfortunately, Ryan Reynolds wasn't. But if they actually put the money and took the risk on somebody who was good, and they could make it work, if they brought in a Tom Cruise to play Hal, I think it absolutely could work if it was done right.
Okay, number one, get this man a Green Lantern comic because you need to write it. Number two, Reynolds is Wally West more than he's anything else.
Absolutely.
Three, my casting was Pine as Hal, Chris Pine as Hal. Mark Strong needs to be Sinestro forever. Idris Elba needs to be John. Bill Burr as Guy. And I want Peter Dinklage as Gambit. I would watch that movie. Go ahead, Nemesis. What do you think? Why are they having a problem bringing the Green Lanterns into the Justice League?
I think Steve hit it on it perfectly. I think you are much smarter than the people that are over there at WB. I think that they look at it, and I'm going to expand on it a little bit. They look at it, and they also look at the current environment that we're in. We were talking about toxicity before. Well, if you want to see toxicity, if you want to see Marvel fans having to go, MCU fans having to go at DC and automatically getting hate for a movie, put a Green Lantern in it after the Green Lantern movie. You want to see critics automatically bashing a movie because they don't want to be seen as possibly saying something good about a movie with Green Lantern in it after the Green Lantern movie, go ahead and do it. That's where we're at right now. And it's sad, but I think it's true. I really do. I think that people will shy away from it for that exact reason, which is why the Green Lantern Corps show on HBO Max, it may be good, it may be great, it may be bad, but it's going to get a lot of hate straight, before it even airs. just because it's Green Lanterns, you know. As far as what I would do, I really like Steve's idea. I think if I was doing a Green Lantern, you know, a new Green Lantern movie for a Hal Jordan in particular, I think what you need to do is show the seriousness and the stakes of the Green Lantern rings, first of all. So I would start it off with almost like a Conan at the beginning, where you had the different, or like the Power Stones from Marvel. We had different colors, you know, in the beginning of the DC universe. You know, the emotions of the collective people were codified into, you know, and then the Green Lantern battery was formed, and you have that, and then you dissolve, and you see Abin Sur fighting, and Abin Sur is a no-nonsense fighter. So the first time you get exposed as a viewer in the movie to constructs is not the goofy stuff, the comic book stuff that I'm fine with because I've seen it forever. Instead, you're seeing a guy who just creates functional constructs, and he's taking out ships and defeating, you know, space people and everything. He gets wounded and falls to Earth, you know. So you've seen exactly what a Green Lantern ring can do, and you know this is not something that you mess around with. And then you kick in with your story to Hal Jordan getting the ring and however you want to do constructs with him or everything. But you've established the gravitas of the Green Lantern ring, what it means. You've established the mythology at the beginning with this overarching idea. And on top of that, I think if you're doing a movie series, and this could even work in a comic book to a certain extent, you've also put in people's mind, hey, green also is opposed by yellow, which is fear, Sinestro. We've got red, we've got black, we've got blue, you know, all these other colors. And people are like, well, if there's green and then we get Sinestro and there's yellow, and then the average viewer, the average public, Joe Public there has already been exposed to it. They're like, well, now I want to see a rage. You know, I want to see a Red Lantern. I want to see what that's about, you know? And then I want to see Star Sapphire. You know, they don't know it's going to be Star Sapphire, but they're like, I want to see Star Sapphire. And then you're building that mythos, you know, and then it takes on a life of its own. But I think the very first thing they need to do, which they didn't, which is show someone who does constructs in a very utilitarian military way and gives you that mythology and that gravitas and that the pure deadliness of what this thing on this guy's hand is, you know, and the fact that some of them choose to do, you know, whatever it is they do with constructs and stuff, well, that's on them, you know, that's their personality. And then you begin to understand it, that that's really a reflection of their character, not a reflection of the powers being goofy. So.
Okay. Well, I agree with that. I would, if I was writing a movie, if I was writing a series, I would do it Count of Monte Cristo style in an extended way. So what would happen is I would see the building of the friendship between Hal and Sinestro. First, they're hardcore enemies because Sinestro can't believe this Earthling upstart thinks he has the nerve to be a lantern. And then Hal slowly proves himself, and Hal does something that saves Sinestro, saves his bacon. Maybe Sinestro makes a mistake, or maybe it's a rare instance where you get in over your head because you're a veteran. Mm-hmm. And Hal does something that Captain Kirk would do, ignores the rules and about the stops. And Sinestro has a begrudging respect for this little Earthling that had the nerve to blah, blah, blah. And by movies in, they're shaking hands and they're laughing and they're buds. That sets us up for the next movie where there's some kind of betrayal and Sinestro goes yellow. That's how you add emotion. That's what I would do. Add that kind of emotional weight to it, because
I just want to add that I wish that they would do the OA series that we had talked about for quite a while. You know, the way that we had everything set up on that, and I know you did a video about it. Yeah, that kind of setup would also work.
And then I think that there's some really fascinating things you could do then, because, you know, I absolutely agree with you with what you do with Sinestro. Sinestro shouldn't turn bad till the end of the second movie, you know, and then the third movie should be Hal versus Sinestro.
That's right.
And I think I was gonna say there's even things you could explore with the whole idea of what the Green Lantern Corps is, because Hal's basically, he's tasked to protecting the law on Earth, you know, and it's like now you've got some foreign organization trying to tell people on Earth what they can or can't do.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, those are some fascinating things you could write.
Grant Morrison did deal with that a little bit.
Yeah, because like the schism come with, like, you know, because Sinestro is the veteran, he's dealt with the Guardians, and then you start to see like, oh, this isn't like, completely unified military. Sometimes the grunts don't agree with the higher ups, and then when Hal is moved into that position as Sinestro is moved out, he starts to chafe because we know in his history he has issues with the Guardians from time to time. Plus, I think it'd be cool to see like the utilitarian uses of the ring, but then we start getting into the goofy stuff as we find out people are specialists. Like, what if one guy is always conjuring like these savage beasts from other worlds, while other guys like he creates all these edge weapons, kind of like a Hela's Necro sword in the Thor movies, like throwing them out everywhere.
Right, and honestly, you almost start getting into a Jedi-like territory, good Jedi territory, where you start having. You could have Hal fall. You could do Darkest Night or something like that, where previously good people become, what is it? I'm not that up to date on my Green Lantern stuff. Was it Parallax? Was one of them?
That was the whole thing. Hal went crazy, killed them all, took their rings, took all the energy because Coast City was destroyed. Then it became Parallax, and we find out later that Parallax is basically a fear demon, and that was the core of the Yellow Weakness, which is one of the most brilliant retcons I've ever seen in my life. Yep. I was like, that was on point, Jeff Johns. I'll give you that. But what I would do, because to me, people don't remember what you say. People remember the way you make them feel. So to me, it would be like if we ever had a story where Spock turns on Kirk. I'm not talking about Pine and Quinto. I'm not talking about that version. I'm talking about Shatner and Nimoy. What if we had all 6 movies, and then we had a movie at some point where one of them turned on each other and they become, because there's no hatred worse than brother hatred. Whenever you have been a brother with someone, if that goes bad, it goes bad hard. There's no halfway. That's the way I would
Obi-Wan. Yeah.
We'd be freaking out. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the way they feel to me. Like brothers who learn how to be comrade in arms, learn how to get over their differences and learn how to trust each other with their lives. And then Hal finds out you have this demigod complex. You're imposing your totalitarian rule on the people of Quard because you're a self-styled savior. And that is against what we stand for. And then all of a sudden you have that. That's the way I would write it, but not right away. Okay.
We've always been friends is how Sinestro put it in one of the Jeff Johns issues. I think that was perfect.
That's right. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's examine the movie from some technical aspects. So I'll throw out some good things I liked and some things I didn't like, and then I'll throw it to you guys. Cinematography is a mixed bag for me. I'm so tired of the washed out blue and gray filter. I'm just tired of looking at it. But once my brain adjusts to it, some of the scenes of cinematography was absolutely breathtaking. But therein lies Snyder's greatest weakness. What Snyder does is he strings together a bunch of really good-looking scenes without a narrative to join them. So he has this really cool, epic-looking stuff that's just, and then every 5 seconds, everything is slow-mo. Hair wave. That kind of thing, So it looked good, but you got to string that stuff together. Like when Flash saves Iris, I'm like, I felt nothing. Wait, what is that? So anyway, so there needs to be an underlying story because you can see it best in Sucker Punch. In 300, there's a story that he didn't write. That's why 300 works. But in Sucker Punch, and in Man of Steel, these awesome epic scenes, but there's not a narrative cohesion. So the cinematography was a mixed bag for me. Like, I'm tired of the blue and gray, but I love the epicness. I love the shots. I love the angles. I love the scope. I love the stuff shot in IMAX. But I really would have liked there to be a meaty story underneath all these great shots because that's his greatest weakness as a director. So there's that. Dialogue, I do have to say, this showed Whedon's greatest weakness in that he thinks everybody got to be snarky. Okay, everybody ain't got to be snarky. Okay, everything is not Firefly. Okay, everything is not Buffy. And there's some stuff that was in that original cut, like when Superman is like, "Are you saying you don't like me?" And Batman's like, "I'm not saying that I don't like you." I'm like, "Man, shut up." Batman and Superman don't have come. They're not teenagers. But anyway, so there were a couple of lines I liked, but there were not a lot of memorable lines. There were some, like I liked. So Wonder Woman, you think she might go for a younger guy? She's 5,000 years old. Everybody's a younger guy. I like that one.
Fair point.
But there wasn't a whole lot of memorable dialogue per se, and Batman was just a little too wisecracking. I wanted to see more. There was no the most intimidating thing he did was when he exposed Flash's speed by throwing the batarang at him. That was Batman. Like la 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 la. Boom. Okay. But the dialogue was just kind of okay. Here comes the second biggest problem, the pacing. Holy cow, this movie was just right here. A slow mountain valley run. You get you all ramped up and we think something's going to happen, then it slows all the way down. And then we have a bunch of drama. Then we go back to that scene we just left and something's going to happen, great. Then it slows all the way back down for 4 hours until we get to the end. And that was like, okay. So I agree with Steve that the first movie and a half was you had to fight to stay awake. Doesn't kick in until second part. Now we're going to save the epilogue stuff just for the end because there's some specific stuff we want to say with that. So that was like the editing and the pacing. The music, the soundtrack, to me, because I do music, it's not that it didn't fit. It's just that, okay, there needs to be an arc to a payoff point. Every good story builds to the payoff point, builds to that climactic moment that you've been waiting to see. Well, so does a melody. Every good melody has a shape, and every good melody has what we call the money note, like the national anthem. It's over the land of the free. Over the land of the free. If you start the song too high, you can't hit land of the free. So that's how I can always tell if somebody knows how to sing or not. Because if you pitch it too high, you got to pitch it based on land of the free. That's a money note. Well, a good melody has a shape, and a good melody does that. And pow is that note right there. Stories work the same way. And I was like, by the time we get to those fights, we've seen so much other stuff that's not relevant. I'm like, this is cool to watch, but where's the emotional punch? You know what I'm saying? Whether you agree with Diana decapitating him or not, whatever you agree what happened, it looks so cool. The crawler on the wall, it looks so cool, but I'm like, do we care like we should? You know what I mean? Because even if we hadn't seen the first cut, we knew that was coming. Why do we care? And so it came close with the fact that Darkseid was here, it was too late, the Flash had to go back in time. But we've seen that a million times already. You know what I mean? So it didn't really feel like, to me, it built well. It just had cool scenes. And then after a certain point, the music started to sound the same to me. I don't know if that's just ear fatigue, because when you're in the studio a lot and you listen to music a lot, after you've listened to a track so many times, you stop hearing it. So you have to take a break because you can't discern anymore. That's what it started to feel like to me. Because when it's just horns all the time, and just strings all the time, and just whole tone movement all the time, after a while, I was like, oh, okay. And finally, in terms of costuming, I thought everybody looked great. The only thing I dislike completely, obviously, is that Flash armor with the mesh. I don't understand that. I don't understand how a character that has a vested interest in being aerodynamically sleek wears the clunkiest costume. You can't make that one make sense. I don't get that one. And then also with Cyborg, this look is obviously a CGI face, or his real face CGI'd onto a CGI body, as opposed to what Cyborg is supposed to look like, which is partially human with grafts. He's supposed to look more like a Borg.
Yeah.
This was more like a full Android Cyborg thing, whatever you want. So that takes a little bit away from the visceral nature of how he suffers being Cyborg. Because that visual is very, very important. To see that half face and all that different kind of stuff. And to see that he does have some skin left.
Yeah.
Skin on his eye. That's very, very important to the character, because then you can understand his Ben Grimm type of pain. I'm partly human and then I'm this other thing. But the way this looked was clearly just like a full mechanized body. So I think that took away just in terms of look. But everybody else, Mira, even though Amber Heard notwithstanding, Mira looks just like Mira. She looked like she walked out of the comics. Talked about the Flash stuff, Batman, Dark Knight Returns, Batman, Superman, especially in his red and blue. Cavill is Superman. So I thought the book to screen translations were 95% on point. So give me your thoughts about that, about the technical aspects: cinematography, editing and pacing, narrative strength, soundtrack, and costuming. Start with Nemesis. I know that's about.
Wow. That's a heck of a lot there. Let me see.
Yeah, and be brief.
Yeah. Let's see. Music. I think I'm going to sum it up this way. The problem I see with Zack Snyder from 300, and this is a pod I'd love to do sometime for Cinema Crusaders, is to see I called it on a different podcast, I call it the de-evolution of Zack Snyder from 300 to Justice League, was that he indulges, as he has gotten more success, he's gotten more latitude to indulge his bad habits. And you can see that. The music is one. He takes a musical score, and instead of it being an integrated whole, he's like, I like this, I like this, I like this. And he does this with everything. He's like, I like this aspect here, I like this aspect there. So I'm just going to throw that there, and I'm going to throw that there. And he doesn't tie everything together and make it a whole. It's what you were talking about with the scenes. It's like the scenes seem to not flow into each other. They don't seem to tell an entire narrative. Instead, what you said going back to the very beginning is this would have been better as 4 1-hour episodes. That's because that's basically what it is. It's 6 different tales that he's telling, and so it's and he's trying to present them as one movie, and that's why it doesn't feel right to us. Costumes. I don't have as much of a problem with the Flash costume as you do, but I do see your point, and I agree with it. I think they were trying to play with this idea that he's like wearing like space shuttle type armor because that's what he had, plates or tiles because that's what he had access to take down the heat. Okay. Do we really need to get into that much detail? Probably not. And whenever I look at it, I'm like, how is that Flash costume going to fit into his ring? That's what I think. So, so I look at that. Other than that, I think everything else looked pretty good. I don't have a big problem with it. To me, Cyborg looks unfinished. It's almost like he hasn't found his final form yet. To me, if I start extending my logic and putting my own logic on it, I can make sense of it. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. So the last thing I really want to hit on, because I kind of hit a little bit on the pacing with the problems I see that Zack Snyder has, is that he indulges himself. He gets down rabbit holes. He's like, oh, I would love to do this, or I'd love to do that. And he goes off and does all these things and then just puts them in there and doesn't tie them together. And one of the things, and this is going to get into cinematography, one of the things Zack Snyder loves is he loves him some melodrama. He loves if he can give you 30 seconds of melodrama, he'll give you 5 minutes of it. If he gives you 5 minutes, he'll give you 25 minutes. It's never enough. And I think the perfect illustration of this, I think your point with the colors is good, and I'm going to hit on that last. But there was a point in that first 90 minutes where we got, and I timed it, 2.5 minutes of slow motion, Lois Lane walking in the rain with coffee. 2.5 minutes. It's like, I get it. I get Lois is sad that Superman's dead. I understand. I'm sad Superman's dead. But I don't need to see 2.5 minutes of her walking in the rain to understand that. I didn't. I really didn't. And it's with the slow motion rain and with modeling music and the whole thing. And I'm just like, at some point, it's like you got to stop this, man, because people that are less stable than me are out there slitting their wrists and stuff. It's like you got to be careful with what you're doing, which then leads right into the colors. And it's like, somebody tell this man it's okay to use color sometime. It's like, and the perfect example for this for me is Apocalypse. I love that they showed Apocalypse. I love that they showed it there, but those characters wear colors. It's like if he had given me a vision of Darkseid with his hands clasped behind his back, wearing the blue suit, I would have been over the moon. I was happy. Instead, all I could concentrate on the fact was that I could barely distinguish his face from his body and whatever he was wearing. And it
Yeah.
was the same thing with Desaad. It was the same thing with the Apocalypse. That hallway as a whole, it was all blacks and orange, and it was all muddled. And it was like, and it was the same thing with Steppenwolf. I think what you guys have said about Steppenwolf is fair. I mean, it was a better design, but it's like, dude, give me some color to offset this, to be a contrast. You know, it's like, it doesn't have to be goofy. It doesn't have to be spandex, but for God's sake, get this man a color wheel, please. You know, so that's really where I'm at with all that.
No, absolutely no. That definitely makes sense. And it's just a funny thing because it's so extreme. That Lois Lane thing was actually a music video inserted in the movie. Cut it out. It's a music video.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And you just put that in, like you said. I think you described it perfectly. Rabbit holes. Wouldn't I love to do this? What about this? What about that? So we're just going to kind of put it, in the pot as, kind of catch-all stew instead of carving out a narrative. And that's what editors are for. That's why creative content people, that's one of the first things, those of you that are watching and listening that create stories, narratives, content, whatever, film, whatever your medium, you need to have an editor that is not you. Okay.
And that's why I think that we really need to do this podcast either on here or on Cinema Crusaders, because you look at 300, somebody reined in Zack Snyder on 300.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They didn't do it on this one. So.
That's right. Well, one of the books that I wrote, one of my children's books, it was when I first got a professional editor. She turned that book into something that I was proud to put out. When I looked at what I originally was going to release, then I looked at it after my editor got through, I was embarrassed with what I wrote. I couldn't believe I was actually going to release that. And that's the number one complaint that fans have for indie authors, is that it's too unprofessional. It's because there's no editing. You have to let your baby go and let the editor do what they're going to do.
When you do film, they call it killing your children. I know, because I've edited my own work, and it's brutal because you fall in love with what you do. But
that's right.
I've got to tighten this up. This is going on too long. People are going to lose interest.
Right. You need to have another set of eyes that's not you. They're going to be much more objective. They're going to be able to see the strengths and weaknesses of the storyline. That's what's going to make it go. And then you can do like extras or whatever. But I'm so glad that I turned my book over to the editor, because what I turned out just was completely different. It was different. She took it to a new level. That wasn't me. That was her. That's what I'm saying. Go ahead, Bracey. Technical aspects of the film.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you brought all that up, because once again, I was thinking, because you mentioned writing and editing, Zack Snyder has become Stephen King. He likes to do these really heavily bloviated things where he has all these cool ideas. Now, you look at some of King's earlier work, it's quite tight, because he was just trying to make it, when he was writing things like Carrie. And look, I love just about everything his, but if you read it is a monstrosity of scene after scene after scene. When you boil it down to the core, which is what the movies and even the old miniseries did, you're like, oh, I love all this. And the same thing for Snyder. I was actually looking up while you guys were talking to see, because you said something I thought of right away. I was looking on his Wikipedia to see if he started out directing music videos, because that's what I thought. He's a perfect music video director. All this cool imagery, all these beats, and then you say oh, the Lois Lane was a sad music video. I was like, shit, me and DT were thinking the same thoughts here. I couldn't find that. His earliest credit on Wikipedia, at least, is Dawn of the Dead, the remake. And I was thinking, once again, you've got Dawn of the Dead, then you've got 300. He's very focused on those pictures. He's not terribly focused since he's gained more and more success. It's a little bit like I don't want to badmouth him too much, but it's a little bit like when George Lucas did everything on the prequels. He should have had other people working with him. And Zack Snyder's that kind of guy as well. He gets really excited about a lot of stuff. He knows what he wants to do. But you do need somebody to rein you in from time to time. You need somebody to keep you focused. But his cinematography is great most of the time. As much as I like slow-mo to accentuate things, it did get really ridiculous with the slow-mo.
Mhm.
I like slow mo for emphasis. Like for instance, the way it was handled when Wonder Woman crawls out of the trench in the first movie. And she's like you get the things from her perspective. You've seen her block a few bullets in the film, but now you're getting things from her perspective as she's taking on the machine gun nest, and she like kind of watches the bullet go by and she knocks the other one out of the air. That's a nice emphasizing moment before you have to bring it back down to real time, and she's got to step behind the shield when they're bringing on like the heavy artillery at her. There's a great example of effectively used slow mo, and I don't remember the name of the film, but it was oh blast, what's his name now? Uh, shoot. The guy played Terry Segura. Um, he's been in so many samurai films.
I'm not sure.
Swordmaker and Kill Bill.
Oh,
Blast.
Sonny Chiba.
Thank you, Sonny Chiba. There's this great moment he did in this film where like the people doing the film, they edited a fight in slow motion, and they kind of did it the reverse. Like we'll see scenes in like Rocky where they're fighting, all of a sudden they slow down to show the impact. They did reverse. The fight was in slow mo until you got right to the impact, so you see the kick coming in, wham, it hits. I love that kind of thing when people like use the technique to emphasize things. But Snyder just like really overused slow mo here for things that didn't even matter. It didn't need to have the slow mo. The scene itself was slow, so it didn't need this extra thing. It was a calm moment. We've all talked about his desaturation to death. I don't get that because this was a guy who actually had a fair amount of color in 300. It was just a few basic primary colors, but a fair amount of color. Even
Mhm.
like looking at Apocalypse, all the heroes are in these down colors. Wonder Woman's wearing this bright red, uh, you know, corset kind of dealy. But who's the brightest looking character on the screen? It's freaking Steppenwolf. He's gold, man. He's crusted in all this cool gold armor.
Mhm.
Even like and they even like toned his parademons way down. They're almost black with like little glowy bits. So like he's always going to stand out in the scene. Uh, and even like when you look into Apocalypse, there's at least all this flooding of orange everywhere too. Like I imagine like the whole burning atmosphere and everything, all this color. And I'm kind of like, maybe Apocalypse should invade, bring a little bit of color in. The only other color I saw was Green Lantern. He got his hand chopped off. Like, but yeah, man, like
Brutal.
color's okay. It's a superhero world. I know you're doing this kind of like down low thing, but bring in some colors. If you're going to keep talking about Superman being hope, I thought it was a really weird choice to have him come out in the black and silver uniform. I thought that was okay for a little while, maybe for one fight scene, uh,
Yes.
maybe when his head was still screwed up a little bit, but then he comes back out in the red. And here's where he decides to put Superman back in his colors in the nightmare future when he's Apocalypse, when he's the pawn of Darkseid. Is like, whoa, no, that's when he should be wearing the black all the time. He's the
Right.
bad guy now. Keep him in the red and blue when he's doing the hero stuff. So weird choices there. I'm like you. I think I'm with Nemesis. I've always thought since the beginning that the Flash costume and the cyborg look, even though I hated both of them, I feel like this was like, you know, Barry's hodgepodging. He can't afford to make a cool aerodynamic suit. They're going to work up to that, kind of like they did in the CW Flash. He started with like the weird, really dark kind of red suit, and they built up to the gold and the red. Really getting there. Cyborg still in a neophyte form. I do miss like him like recreating a really humanoid form for himself instead of this oddly uh, techno organic kind of zombie shape, with all these angles and things and like the missing torso and all that. I want him to have like a form we can identify again with, give him a heroic form. I wish he would have transmuted into that during the final fight when he decided, like, I'm really going to be a hero, and he upgrades into Cyborg 2.0. And like you said, let's get a little bit of that Victor Stone showing back again. We used to see part of his shoulders and stuff in the classic
Mhm.
look.
Mhm.
Let's have a little bit of that because right now he's like, the 2018 or RoboCop. He's a head on a stick on a
Mhm.
metal body. Like it's hard to identify with that. We need something a little bit more. And then you even went so far from a technical standpoint. It made sense to have the shield come down over his face to protect him, a la Iron Man. but now he's just got this one eye, and that becomes very difficult to identify with. At least Iron Man, even with that non-movable mask, he has features we identified: two eyes and a mouth. And now I see Cyborg charging the battle. I'm like, dead shot, dead shot, dead shot, dead shot the whole time. So that was a weird choice. Other than that, I thought the other costumes looked pretty great, and it was nice to see them done Snyder's way, mostly for the fact that in the recolored Whedon version, which again, no fault to Joss, he was doing what he's told to do. Those suits had been made for how Snyder was going to edit and how he was going to colorize, and so they looked ridiculous in those brightly lit, super colored scenes. I could see all the fake muscles in Batman's and Superman's suits. They looked atrocious. These suits were made to be desaturated. They were made to be shot high contrast, and they looked fabulous for it. Musical beats. Now, the music was interesting because I am very much into music, even though I'm not a composer. And I was always very aware of Wonder Woman's theme coming up. And I always get excited when I hear Wonder Woman's theme. It's such a standout piece of music. And oh, Diana's about to kick some ass when those strings start playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the touch when they're all sitting around the mother box in the Batcave trying to decide what to do. And you very subtly hear the Superman theme start coming up from Man of Steel. And you know where they're going to go with it before they actually come to the decision. That was a great use of the music. But like you said, most of the time it was just kind of background noise. I kind of lost myself to it. It became like a Michael Bay in terms of visuals. It just was something that just was back here, and I wasn't really paying attention to it anymore. And it was only because Wonder Woman's personal theme is so distinctive that sort of thing stood out to me. Let's see, what were the other topics?
Cinematography, music, costumes, editing, pacing.
I think you really said it all with the editing, pacing. Snyder, he's got a 4-hour movie. He feels like he can do what he did. He could have trimmed this down easily by 30 to 45 minutes and had a much tighter film.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Steve. Technical aspects of the film. Just whatever stood out at you, whatever you liked, whatever you really didn't like.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go into too much depth because I think you guys have covered it pretty heavily. I will say to start with that I'm pretty much in agreement with Jeff on the Superman suit. And because honestly, they could have had this tremendous moment where after at the end of the movie, Clark comes out and, he does the usual thing where he, starts to take off the shirt and there's the Superman thing underneath, and it would have been red and bright, and we would have had, and that would have signified that this is Superman back. That would have signified that he's really had grown and he had changed and he got to the end of his arc. And what does he do? He's wearing black and silver.
I was totally shocked to see that.
I was too. I was like,
I hated that.
That's me as well.
It was a perfect moment for him to come full circle, and he didn't. That I put that on Snyder because and in addition that there's no reason for him to be wearing it. There is no special reason other than Snyder really likes black. Snyder really doesn't like color. He's afraid of the color wheel. That it's ridiculous. And there have been people that have pointed out, hey, I can't tell the difference between Darkseid and Desaad because they both look the same. Yeah, they do look the same because they're both the same color. It's like, look at the way Kirby did it. He had a lot of really bright colors. Steppenwolf looked, much different from what we have seen in this film. I mean, a lot of times you see him in, reds and things like that. And that would have been pretty cool. That would have distinguished them. Desaad usually wears these purple robes, to distinguish from, Darkseid in his gray and his blue. And that would have been, if they had put that in, that would have been great. But no, we can't have color. The pacing and the editing, I think you covered the music pretty well. It's just that, and I can definitely tell they didn't build to all this melodrama. It's overdone, and it's not paid off like it was like at the end of Superman's arc. You could just definitely tell that they're doing these overdone scenes. Yes, Lois has a sad because Clark is dead, and they just go on with this ridiculously overdone music, like, this is something, out of an emo teenager movie. And and I love Amy Adams, and she does the best she can with it. But a lot of times the music will make or break the scene. And if you overdo it, you kill the effect you're going for, and you're not hitting the emotional note correctly. And I think that there was a lot of that going on in the first 90 minutes. All these slow-mos. Really, the best use of slow-mo was the flashes scenes when he's running. We're supposed to see that. We're supposed to see time going to a crawl as he's moving faster. So those scenes work. So even though, people laugh at the hot dog scene, and all of that, the fact is you want to see, the world, from his perspective, and how time slows down. And there were moments where that really worked. But the problem is you can't do that and do the slow-mo with the Lois scene or with some of the Amazon scenes, and in addition that there's just no reason for this to have been 4 hours when you have all of this ridiculous slow-mo. What was the point of the Icelandic singing? It's like, does it sound cool? Yes. It just doesn't work. And there are just always these little things. And Snyder's overindulgent, and I would definitely agree with Nemesis in, the fact that he's been allowed to get away with too much. I agree he's not being edited sufficiently. I can definitely tell you that, like, the recent script for the comic that I did was made much better, because the editor pointed out, hey, why don't you have a better ending to your issue than what you gave me? And I'm like, okay, that I can come up with something better, and I think it ultimately made the comic better. You shouldn't be afraid of criticism or think that you're so great that you don't need to have an editor. And I think the problem with Snyder is I feel like as he's gotten bigger and bigger, his ego has also gotten bigger and bigger, and he is not really listening to his editors or whoever's telling him things as much. I don't know, maybe Deborah's telling him things, I don't know. But, I mean, you can definitely tell in some of these scenes that they are overindulgent, that he is overdoing them because he thinks it's cool. He does a lot of things. In a way, he's kind of like J.J. Abrams in this, in that he does these things that he thinks visually look cool, and they make no sense. And so, you get, okay, yeah, the Steppenwolf thing looks cool, but it doesn't make sense, and things like this. And then you have Flash's costume, which I never liked, but in addition, you have things like, okay, it may look cool to you, but it's like, why does he have this suit when he's barely, he's having to get this job from this lady with a dog? It's like, okay, well, if you need that, where are you getting the materials to make these complex suits? How are you paying for that? So none of these questions are asked, but they look cool, so let's put them in the movie, okay, yeah, let's have this lab-like lab. How is he getting the money to pay for it? We don't answer that. So yeah, all these sorts of things that are ridiculous, in addition to the fact that I never really liked that costume anyway. So you have that Cyborg. I thought he looked fine for what they were doing, but yeah, I wish that we'd seen more of the human side, but it looked fine for on the visual level, I guess. I would say mostly my issues with the design are the saturation, which we've talked about, and some of these other issues. But it's not too bad. It's better than the Whedon cut. I'll give it that. It's better than the Whedon cut.
No, that's for sure. Okay,
it's not a compliment.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw this stuff out right quick, and then we'll go to the final thing because we're over the 2-minute mark. But I want to get to this last thing. So I'm just gonna throw these out and laugh or get mad or push back or whatever. But I'm just gonna throw them out. Why was Cyborg's dream self taller than his real self? World. 1, 2. I don't care what anybody says. I don't know if Amy Adams and Henry Cavill have chemistry, because that Lois and that Clark have not earned that relationship. That relationship is written like Khan was written in Star Trek Into Darkness. When Cumberbatch is in the prison, he says, "My name is Khan." And Kirk and Spock are like, which is what they should have done. They were talking as if they were audience characters, because we know who he is. And even in the same movie, young Spock has to call old Spock and say, "Who is this guy?" So that was an almost fourth wall breaking moment. In terms of Wonder Woman, I agree with everything. When the music comes up, everything kicks in. That's all good. But again, She doesn't have personality moments, and that always leaves me flat about her. The plot, we don't need to talk about the plot because the plot was as generic as possible. 3 MacGuffins, join them together. You have unlimited power because Stephen will phone home. Okay, all right. So there was nothing deep about that. Okay, cool. So here's the thing I wanted to get to, and that is that it had about 4 endings, and I agree with what you said initially, that those endings had to be on purpose, but I'll tell you what they did to me, that I want to hear what you guys think. I realize that's the dark side takes over Superman, or Superman goes dark, or whatever, and then they showed Flash in the costume he was in when he went back to see Batman, so they finally justified that scene in the last few minutes of the movie when we see bearded Flash. Lois Lane is the key to everything. That, it was the only moment that scene finally made sense, because I hate that scene in the movie. I hate that Flash with the bit. I hate it. But when I saw that, I was like, okay, it's an in-story reason, so I can curb a little bit of my hatred because now it makes sense contextually. But here's what happened. Not only was it the dark side thing, they introduced Ryan Choi. And I'm like, so are we going to get Ray Palmer? Is it going to be like a Hank Pym, Scott Lang thing? Or are we going to see more of Ryan? Or like, where's that going? That was just out there. I was like, wait, that's Ryan Choi. And then, Miracle thing. And then they talked during the whole, also, 2 things. I'm glad they got rid of Whedon's scene where Diana lassos Aquaman and he goes emo and he starts spilling his guts. Yeah, that's Buffy. This is the Justice League. Okay. And also, I don't understand why people think Aquaman's power to talk to fish is lame. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. You get in the water, you can tell the sharks what to do. No. But anyway, but when they did that, and he's found us, and, Mira, because the Atlanteans and the Amazons have traditionally had war, and then in Flashpoint they have war, and then actually somebody kills somebody. Diana kills Mira. Because Diana and Arthur sleep together in front of Mira. Mira don't like that. And then Diana kills her. And that's what starts the war. Okay. But they winked at Injustice Gods Among Us. That's what made me geek out. I was like, holy cow. It changed my whole everything. I was like, wait. Because they had stupid, should have been the Crow, Jared Leto Joker there. Crackhead Joker. I ain't down with Crackhead Joker. Sorry. They had him there. But then he says, how many timelines do you suppose we could have altered if you had saved her? So he's needling Batman because Lois Lane dies. That was the trigger in Injustice Gods Among Us. So for those of you that didn't read that, spoiler alert, what Joker did was he hypnotized Superman and made Superman see Doomsday. Superman took Doomsday up into space and beat him to death. It was Lois, and she was pregnant. So Joker tricked Superman into killing the love of his life, carrying his unborn child, because he made him see Doomsday. And Joker was cracking up, and Superman lost his mind. And
of course, we see Lois' pregnancy test in this movie.
Right, and Batman, being Batman, says, "Believe me, Clark, I know how you feel. But if we cross that line, we won't be any better than them." Superman's like, to heck with that line, and he sticks his hand through Joker's heart. And that's what kicks off Injustice Gods Among Us. And that's when Superman basically becomes Emperor Superman, and Batman stands against him. That's what that took me to, not just the dark side storyline. I was like, wait just a minute. Are we going to do Injustice? Is that what you're saying? See, that changed the whole everything for me, them 3 movie endings. The Ryan Choi ending, the evil
for Injustice.
Right, the evil Superman ending, winking to Justice Gods Among Us, and then Martian Manhunter. I'm like, wait just a minute. So if they had rolled credits when Diana beheads Steppenwolf and Darkseid crushes his skull and that's it, that would have been fine. But they gave us like 3 movie trailers. Like, wait. So I was so geeked out. And that's the thing that turned my feelings about this movie, was the endings. I know a lot of reviewers said they were redundant. It was too long. I know that. I get that from a technical standpoint. I agree. But from a geek standpoint, that's what changed my whole feeling. my entire feeling for the movie changed with the 3 endings. So I was like, Ryan Choi, really? I was like, possible injustice, really? Joker killed Lois, and he's throwing it in Batman's face, and Superman turned because of that? Really? And so now I'm like, are we going to get a follow-up? And like, probably not. But so that was a troll. Isn't that what you guys said? That was a troll? You've been trolling this for a while? Because I was like, wait. So let me hear your thoughts about those endings. The Ryan Choi, the Dark Superman serving Darkseid, a possible injustice, and Martian Manhunter. Start with Steve.
Yeah, before I get into that, I will very, very briefly touch on the one thing that I would actually like to see done and followed up on, and that is the stuff in the past with the Alliance, or as I call it, the last alliance of men and elves, because that's what it looked like. I wanted to see that. I would love to see that, a movie about that. Okay, so I will get that out of the way and go.
Okay.
Beyond that, I really didn't put some of the stuff together until you talked about Injustice, because I have not played the game very much and I have not read the comics at all. But what you described actually sounds like it would have worked. I generally tend to have a problem with like Lois being the catalyst of Superman going bad, because it seems like they try to make her like his morality pet, and it's like if it wasn't for her, he would be a murdering psychopath. That's not really him, but the way you put it. Because it makes a lot more sense, because not only is she dealing with the fact that his wife and child are dead, he has all this crushing guilt because he feels responsible for it, and because he's Superman, he always feels responsible for everything, and so he is compensating for that by trying to do this Overlord stuff, saying, okay, I can't save her, but I can save everybody else and stop this from happening again, and then he goes down the dark path. That is a lot more plausible to me. I'm afraid that Snyder is not that subtle, and that he wouldn't do it like that. Because he's not subtle at all. He doesn't do subtlety. So, if it were done well, I would love to see that. I agree. That having been said, I'm not a big fan of Leto's Joker. They tried to do this weird thing where he's almost kind of like trying to be the Ledger Joker, but Ledger was a much better at it. Not only that Ledger's a better actor, let's face it, but he also really seemed to understand the character a lot better, or at least make him in a way that was interesting, in a way that most versions of the Joker aren't, because I typically can't stand the Joker, but that version I really liked. I just didn't get that from Leto's Joker at all. The only thing that I thought was interesting, though, was the idea that, okay, the Joker and Batman are forced to work together because they have no choice. That's interesting. Okay, that I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of. The Deathstroke stuff could have been interesting. At least the Nightmare Deathstroke stuff is interesting. I like the idea of doing something with Deathstroke and Batman, but it seems like they did one of the things that really irritates me with Deathstroke, and that is they try to make him a Batman villain because all of Nightwing's best villains have to be Batman villains now. And they basically not only gave him the whole backstory with the eye, apparently, which really kind of got on my nerves. It's the whole idea that Deathstroke, wants to destroy Batman the same way that he tried to destroy the Teen Titans, with the whole origin with that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see that. Not okay with that. In addition, that I really feel that the whole revenge scheme is better served by a character like Bane. I think Bane would do that. I don't think that Deathstroke would do that. So there's a little bit of that. Plus, I can't stand Jesse Eisenberg Luthor, and you're never going to convince me that he has any charisma or any menace whatsoever. Never going to convince me of that. So, I would do without that. I would like to see Ryan Choi. I like the all-new Adam when Gail Simone wrote it. That was pretty decent. I would like to see a movie in the vein of that. That would be great. There are various little things that could be interesting if they decided to explore them. I don't think we're going to, unless we get, another ridiculous hashtag campaign, that somehow changes things, which I hope doesn't happen, because I'm tired of WB bending to these people. But at least on the bright side, there would be some interesting ideas coming from it. Okay.
They're never going to top Ron Perlman's Deathstroke from the original Teen Titans cartoon. Ron Perlman's Deathstroke is the Kevin Conroy of Deathstrokes. Okay,
Perlman plays badasses like no other.
And,
right. That's not going to be topped. And I like watching
and Clancy Brown's Lex Luthor.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And Clancy Brown's Lex Luthor.
Yeah. That same level stuff. That's right. Conroy's Batman, Clancy's Lex Luthor, and Perlman's Deathstroke. That's right. They're all the peak versions of those characters. They're not going to top that. But I saw Ron live in one convention. He was talking about saying his lines, and even the way he pauses, even his delivery, is you're not going to top that. So, and I agree with you completely that they don't need to try to take all night with these villains all out. That's cool. So Bracey, we go to you next. Tell me what you think about those different endings and the different things they were winking at. The reason I didn't bring up Eisenberg's Luthor is because I can't stand him. I cannot stand one line, one scene, one anything. I've said it about 5 times on Twitter. He's the Riddler. He's the Mad Hatter. He's Arcade. He's not Luthor. He's not even Birthright Luthor, which is what the clapback I got is. He's not that version either. Nothing about that. And see, there's no easy way to say this. You can't get me to take a guy seriously that pushes a Jolly Rancher in somebody's mouth because I clock you. You can't put some candy in my mouth. I'm from Chicago. What's wrong with you? Put some candy in my mouth. No, that we just have to throw in. Put some candy in my mouth. I don't treat my kids that way. So I don't understand it. Some of these people that write these folks, I don't understand it because I'm like, I don't know where you from, but we don't run with it. So anyway, I can't stand him. I can't stand anything about Eisen Luthor. Just get out of my face and go back to the social media contract, the fake, whatever movie you made, be that. Because anyway. Go ahead, Bracey.
He's not even Rosenbaum's Luthor.
Oh man, Rosenbaum
was awesome.
Yeah, he's peak, man. Smallville Luthor is peak.
I'll tell you, I wish it was like he was still like the Smallville age because he would have been my pick for the Flash. He's got the build, and he already played a great Wally West in the Justice League, so why not? Yeah, I was kind of surprised, like when they, like, oh, okay, we're doing this scene again. Okay, here comes Luthor, here comes Deathstroke, and I really thought they were going to end on the Legion. It's like, they've got a team. Let's build a team of our own. But instead, it feels like Snyder wanted to spin off into an individual Batman movie as well. I'm like you guys. I don't agree with taking traditionally a Teen Titans villain and making him a Batman villain just because you don't have things set up. It's just like all of Arrow's villains came from Batman's pull. If you can't pull from his own stuff, create something interesting and new. Like I didn't like seeing Deathstroke fight Arrow on the Arrowverse per se, as much as I like the actor who plays him, and everything like that. So I would like to see the proper hero paired with their proper villain. Those of us who grew up with the media, this is what we expect. This is what we look for. So you're making this. I know you're making these things for a broader audience, but you're also making them for us because we know, and we're going to talk about it. So there's that. So, and again, for those of you who don't know, Deathstroke actually loses his eye to his wife when in his own ego, he won't bow down to people who've got his son hostage, and his son's throat gets cut enough to sever his vocal cords.
Yes.
He kill all the bad guys, and his wife, out of just pure vengeance for his arrogance, risking their son's life, tries to shoot him, but his superhuman reflexes allow him to almost dodge. Takes out an eye, though. So yeah, that ending, and I also thought it was weird to put Luthor in Arkham. That came across as weird. He should have been in like some maximum super security penitentiary, and I think it would have been cool to actually see him use his smarts to escape, kind of like Mr. Glass did in Glass, the Shyamalan film. That would have been a cool thing you could have done in just a couple of minutes. As far as the Nightmare ending, there is some interesting stuff to see there. I don't know much about Choi as the Atom. I haven't read any of his stuff, so I can't speak on that. Again, for my money, this is where Superman should be in the black suit full time, is in this apocalyptic vision. It was kind of weird what they did with the Joker here, because they're playing up alternate realities, so he doesn't look fully like the Leto Joker. He's lost his tattoo. I didn't mind the battle scars. This guy's been waging a war, and the hair. Obviously, he's wearing makeup now on top of his normal pallor because the Leto Joker does have the bleached skin. But it was like, all right, let's just throw all the Joker stuff we like into a bag. So he had makeup and he had the. So it's like, oh, he's a little bit Jared Leto. He's a little bit, Phoenix. He's a little bit Ledger. Like, okay, whatever. It's kind of like the anything Joker, the everyman Joker, and even the way Leto portrayed the character was different. I'm sure you guys probably caught on to it too. He was not doing the same Joker from Suicide Squad. He had a whole different take on this guy. And I find that kind of interesting in a way. Is like, well, what the heck is this Joker seeing that he's not acting like himself per se? He's got a whole different vibe. This Joker must have seen some stuff that even rattled him a little bit. And yet he's still going to kind of poke at Batman. I did like him poking at Batman, but I did also like the response of Batman talking about Harley Quinn is like, I'll kill you slow. And there's the Joker is like, he's afraid for a moment. It's like, oh wow. Oh, no. You would never kill me. It's like, don't bet on that. So there was a kind of a cool interplay here and there. It's funny you talk about Cyborg's real self being taller than his old self, which I noticed that too. And that's why I wish he had a suit instead of a CGI body, because to me that kept looking weird. He was too short.
Yes.
And then when you see him in the kind of Days of Futures Past thing, or like this horror vision of the future, he's got like a humpback, and I'm like, what is going on underneath that cloak? And it's like, oh, he's just got some extra weaponry. But you're super strong, man. Why are you hunched over like the side? Stand tall.
Right.
You're a robot, man. Fix your posture. So I don't know. There was lots of fun geeky things for those of us who have read the comics and understand what's going on. The really nifty little needle into Injustice, and I think Snyder was going there as well. And I've said before, like somebody asked me, like, what film would do you think Zack Snyder should do as far as comic books? I was like, Injustice. He wants to deconstruct superheroes. There you go. Mm-hmm. I don't buy Superman becoming a lackey of Desaad because Lois is dead. That doesn't happen. Superman Injustice I buy, because he starts going like, okay, I let my father die, and now my wife and my kid has died. I'm going to make sure nobody dies. The only way to do that is to take total control of the world. And then it's a slippery slope until you just descend to complete tyranny. And that can happen to anybody, even the best of us. So that I buy. But like I don't see him like having that Emperor Palpatine moment is like, like, we will bring order to this world. Oh, by killing a bunch of people. Yeah, I'm on board. Man, that doesn't happen. Superman would have started by killing. So like, Batman, you should have killed the Joker. None of this would have happened. I'll do it from now on. Anybody crosses the line, you know where my line's at now. You start killing people, I take you out, and it just snowballs from there. But he just doesn't. Okay, I'm a bad guy. I'm just a bad guy. No.
Yeah, I'm just a totalitarian dictator that flies in the face of everything I've stood for 30 years. Yeah, no, you got to have a real reason. Go ahead, Nemesis.
Yeah, I'm just going to try and keep it quick, and I'll say that all of these endings, they had geeky moments. I enjoyed parts of them. You've already heard what I said, though, about how I think it was on purpose to force this Snyderverse stuff, especially that nightmare scene. But the best way I can summarize all of them is all of them had hell no moments in them where they were like, where they did stuff. So what do I mean by that? Okay, you give me Ryan Choi and you're talking about microtechnology and you just let it drop. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Hell no. What are you doing? Or you give me Martian Manhunter and he flies off. Martian Manhunter flies in the sky and then boom, credits. I'm like, oh, hell no. Hell no. What are you doing? And then the final one, there were two in the nightmare sequence. The first one, Jeff hit on, where Batman drops an F-bomb and tells Joker he's gonna kill him. And then that's it. I'm never gonna know why. I'm like, oh, hell no. And then And then on top of that, before that, he alludes to the fact that Harley Quinn died in his arms, bloody. So Harley gets to die. I don't get to see it, and they just drop it right there. Oh, hell no.
And
Hell
remember,
no.
Aquaman is dead. Superman kills him.
Yeah, there's another one. That's another hell no moment.
And Dick Grayson is dead, apparently.
Yeah, so it's like.
Oh, but we knew that from BTS.
Yeah, but they're kind of implying that that's connected to the nightmare stuff.
Yeah,
but he's dangling that carrot.
Yeah, but you're throwing out there that Harley died in his arms, and then Harley, while she's dying bloody, asked Batman to make sure that he kills Joker slow, and then you're just gonna drop it like, hell no, he cannot do that. So, yeah, so that's where I was at on those different endings, besides the other things we've already talked about.
So I mean, it was just almost an ultimate kind of thing, set up. And I think what you guys were saying about how, maybe he's parlaying for a next chapter. And I'm like, if it was just a movie, that might be cool. But it's gonna be the hashtag. It ain't gonna be just a movie. Then we got to deal with all that. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, y'all just made the movie. So what I was hoping would happen was that they would do 4 1-hour movies. And then they were talking about doing a continual Snyderverse. If you remember, they were talking about opening him up to let him do other things. And so maybe that's what some of that was about, because it certainly opened the door for those stories to be told. And I agree, if he's going to do Injustice or Justice League Dark or something like that. My pick for Snyder has always been Justice League Dark, Outsiders, Blue Devil, Constantine, Swamp Thing. That's the kind of stuff where he can just go in there and go crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's his feeling, whatever. But leaving it like that and having Martian Manhunter basically say, I'll see you around. That's what Superman said at the end of Superman Returns. Lois is like, I'll see you around. He's like, I'm always around. Like, what do you mean? Okay, so you just found out you got a son and you did this big old speech and the son becomes a father and the father becomes a son, using more Christ analogy when you really come from Moses, but that's another conversation. And so then you're like, and Lois is, I ain't gonna smoke and blah, 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 and he just flies off. I'm like, dude. So, and then we finally get that Superman back in CW's Crisis with Brandon Routh at least playing Superman again. So who knows where this is going to lead to? And after seeing all this, I'm like, man, everything up to that point was cool. And then you open up this can of worms, and now we want to see all this happening. And on top of that, who was it that mentioned The Rock? Was that you, Nemesis?
Yep.
Okay, so now Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is saying, as if you saw the Shazam movie, there's a headless Superman cameo. So they didn't show Cavill's face, but they did show Superman in the costume, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. That's because why don't Billy Batson just tell the world I'm Captain Marvel? But anyway, so but he's saying that he wants that universe. So I'm like, so you're saying we're going to get Zachary Levi and Henry Cavill in the Black Adam movie? We're going to do that? Or like what? Is that going to be like a different thing? So now I'm like, it created anticipation that I didn't want to have. Do you understand what I mean when I say that? Like it was cool, but now I wanted to let it go. I wanted this to be the last time we have to talk about Snyderverse or anything. And he goes on and he does other stuff. But now it's like, is Cavill going to show up in Black Adam? Because The Rock wants him to. So does he want to? And if he does that, that means it's Snyderverse. If Cavill is Superman, and that means, so pretty clearly it's going to be Zachary Levi in there too. So, so now it's this subtle thing of, are they all kind of tied together?
Well, and there's even more to it than that. I don't want, because it's a whole other pod. This is about politics of studios and stuff. But Snyder doesn't have a lot of friends at WB, but Snyder has a lot of friends in AT&T. And AT&T controls HBO Max, not WB. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, he could totally break this out into a number of series, and that's what the epilogue felt like to me. It felt like a pitch meeting, but not to a board of executives, but to the internet.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but the politics of that corporation are that Snyder didn't have a whole lot of friends within the executives at Warner Brothers, which is the studio division that does movies and stuff. But he has a heck of a lot of friends or supporters who are looking at the bottom line as well as other stuff at AT&T, and they control HBO Max and Warner Brothers. So,
okay, so I'll end on this. This is one of the few things that all fans agree on, even though we don't all agree on the resolution. We agree on this fact I'm about to state, and that is that DC needs to make up their minds if they're going to have a shared universe or not.
Yeah.
If you're not going to have a shared universe, then you're going to have one-offs and trilogies that are self-contained, which is cool. What's wrong with that? If you are going to have a shared universe, then it needs to be all the way shared. So what it is now is half shared, because we met Wonder Woman in Batman vs. Superman, and then she got her own films. And now she's been a part of the Snyder thing. So now it's all mixed together. So now, like I said, we unfortunately are waiting with bated breath, unfortunately, because we're not done with this. We've got to see what happens next. What happens probably with Black Adam is going to be the answer to what we're talking about now. Because, go ahead.
Which is why it's so painful. Because it's like, even though I said I don't want to pay attention, I'm tired of restore the Snyderverse and everything, this is what we do. This is what we do because we love it. This is what I do professionally, you know? And so I've got to pay attention. So it's like, damn you. It's like Lance Lucero from Warehouse 9 was saying. It's like, I keep trying to get out and keep dragging me back in.
Keep dragging me back in. Keep dragging me back in.
It's like none of us really wanted to watch Picard, but we had to.
Yes.
It's better to be talked about than not to be talked about, to quote Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
True. That's true. That's true. And so the money-making potential they've left on the table because they don't understand that they need to make a decision. And if they make the right decision, which is making it shared, you don't have to copy Marvel. But what you will do is exponentially increase your audience automatically, because those people that are fans of one character, if they know they're going to be in this next movie, they'll go to see it just for that. Okay. They understand that with Batman. They don't understand that actually works universe-wide. If you like Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, anything she's in, you're going to go see her in that film. So hopefully they can make some better decisions going forward. And hopefully, let me say, I hope we get another warehouse scene. Can I just get another warehouse scene where Batman's actually using martial arts and using his grappling gun and disappearing and actually hitting people where you can hear the bones crunching? Can I just get another warehouse scene? I'm just asking a question.
And throwing gadgets on the guns that causes the gun to blow up and take it out of the person's hand. I think because that was the best thing at all. Really.
I want the fight choreographer. The fight choreographer for BVS said we were going to see a Batman like we'd never seen before. A Batman that you believe could take on a room full of people and even give Superman a hard time. And he friggin' delivered. I want to see that movie now because I'm like you, DT. You know, every couple of weeks, I just watch that scene over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get enough of it.
Well, one of the things you do, you guys, we've talked about it often. One of the things you do if you've studied any type of martial arts or if ever you just fought, anything that you know how to do, when they put it on the screen, if it ain't right, it jumps out at you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand watching people play that can't play because you can tell this that they can't play. They're trying to play the drums and they're like, drums don't go like that. They're playing the piano and they have the hands in the upper register and they're doing bass notes. I'm like, piano don't go like that. So the same thing is true with any type of fighting, any type of stance, any type of finger moves, any type of fist closing with the punches, how you drive the punch, if you know how to block. And if you're doing something like judo or aikido or something where you're using the motion of your opponent against you and they're coming at you with all they got and you just go with that. And Batman's a master of all that. He's a master of all that. So I'm like, he needs to be a detective and he needs to be a master mixed martial artist. So whenever we get that Batman, that's always the best Batman. That's always what jumps out at us. And I'm like, so So that's the one thing about Batfleck that I want to continue, is that I need to see that going on. And the reason that's so important, besides it being my favorite character, is because it's his brain and his Rocky-like determination and healing factor that justifies him being on the Justice League. He can think his way out of situations as a strategist better than any of them. And he doesn't even have superpowers. And he knows, no matter what level he's fighting on, how to take that strength and turn it into a weakness. That's why he's my favorite character. Because he can't outside he's not thinking.
And that's something they did in this film. Like, you hear people say, oh, Batman didn't hardly do anything. Batman is way out of his league in this film. And it shows he's fighting these parademons, and they're stronger than human beings. And he's getting tossed around and getting his butt kicked, and he's still hanging tough in there. And he has to adapt. He has to adapt his tactics. He has to adapt his weapons. He even has to change armor when he goes into the final fight. And so people who are down on Batman in this film are not giving him enough credit. He's doing the best he can with what he's got.
And
I like the fact that he showed, here's a man fighting amongst gods.
Yeah.
Right. And he said more than once, we have to stick to the plan. That's Batman. We've thought this through. I've come up with the optimal way we can win. So we can't let emotions get out of control. So here comes Joker trying to pull me over to my emotions. So yeah, I get emotional, but we got to stick to the plan. That's Batman. That's why he walks amongst gods, as you say. All right, we're going to call it there because we could talk for another 2 hours because we're still just scratching the surface.
Easily.
This chat is going to end up being longer than the movie.
Hey, well, like Nemesis says, man, we do this because we love it. We can't get enough.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank my co-host. Thank you so much, Nemesis.
Oh, no problem. This was great. And like you said, we really could talk about this another 2 hours, especially if I had brought up, which I didn't, Batman coming up with some way to block heat vision. Throwing that out there. So
we're going to have to talk about that because I know that too. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, glad to be here. This could easily have gone way, way longer than it was, and and we might knock on this movie, but I mean, we got a certain amount of enjoyment out of it, that we were able to go through it as long as we did, and even if some of it is ironic, it's still worthwhile.
Ironic is the right word, and thank you so much, Bracey.
I'll tell you, I enjoyed the movie enough that I will purchase it. I will add it to my collection, unlike the theatrical release, which is nowhere near any of my DVDs or Blu-rays.
Yep.
And just to let you guys know how geeky we are, we got on Green Lantern. We could have done 2 hours just on Green Lantern and how to make a better movie and why he's not in the movies.
So,
absolutely.
Keep that in mind.
First movie, Jaws cut. Steppenwolf has acne. Snyder cut. Steppenwolf is in the costume. So that's a thumbs up from us. All right, folks. Thanks for checking us out. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Don't forget to throw your questions at us. Let us know how you feel about what we've said. Check out the other podcasts on the United Capes Podcast Network and on Comic Crusaders. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers. And we're out.